morning that it is. Spring may be around the corner. If you could, please rise and we'll take a moment of reflection before we start the meeting, please. Thank you. And are you ready to go there, Ash?
Yeah.
If you can give us an update from anybody that's going to be joining us online, please.
Thank you. Before I begin, at any point, if you get disconnected, you can dial 1-647-558-0588 and enter the ID for this meeting, which is 891-5626-2480. Both members of council and staff have been briefed on the various features of the Zoom meeting software and will be raising their hand physically to speak. For members of the public, if you require any technical assistance, please send a message to myself, Ashley Noble, Communications Coordinator, and I will attempt to assist you. It should be noted for members of the public that this meeting is taking place across 2 meeting platforms, both on Zoom as well as being live streamed on YouTube. Public participation, if any, must be done through Zoom and cannot be done through YouTube at this time.
Thank you, Ashley. Any declaration of pecuniary interest or conflicts of interest? Not recognized at this time. If it does rise, it can be declared at any time throughout the meeting, of course. And delegations. We welcome this morning. We have a delegation from Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority is with us this morning. A slight variance, I believe, in the agenda. It says it's Alyssa McLeod and Laura Molson. I don't think, Eric, you're Laura Molson. Oh, you want to go and find her? Welcome. No, Eric Downing is here. We have it on our agenda, as I said, as Laura, but it's Eric Downing, who's the acting general manager at this point in time. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you. I'm going to ask if you can make the presentation from the table over here so you have access to the microphone. And to staff, Jody, or we've got the package loaded so we can. Yeah. Nope. Sorry, Jody. Wrong one. Yeah. Got you, a deer in the headlights. Ashley has it up and coming. You have a slide deck for us, I think, Eric. So.
Yes, thank you for that introduction, Mr. Mayor. And yes, not Laura. Thank you for recognizing that. I will mention that I've been spending the weekend holding the furniture down in my own household. Not a lot of health, so I'll be supporting Elise here, and she will provide the presentation to us, and I'll be available for any questions certainly. Elise also has some illness of visiting her home. I was just informed as well, so we're in rough shape over here, but excited to make the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, I see it up on the screen now. So this delegation is in response to the council motion that we received a few weeks ago, or maybe a month ago now, requesting clarification on some ownership items, liability, and general purpose of some of the structures, that the water infrastructure that resides within the municipality of West Grey. To start on, I guess, yeah, if you don't mind going to the next slide, please. With the Conservation Authorities Act, we just included this as it's the most relevant section of the Act that discusses why conservation authorities are allowed to bill special benefiting municipalities and the mandates for Category 1, 2, and 3 services. So just highlighting powers of authority section where we are able to determine the total benefit afforded to a municipality. Next slide. Just touching on these very quickly is noting Category 1, 2, and 3 that came out by recent bill changes. So Category 1 our core mandates. A number of SVCA water infrastructure projects are considered category 1. However, there are some that are category 2 that are delivered on behalf of municipality. This would apply for structures that are owned by a municipality. Next slide. So we have a few different kinds or types of billing within the Water Resources Department. Start with general levy, which you're probably most familiar with. It's divided across all 15 municipalities based on an apportionment calculation. We also have in our budgets separate schedules, I guess, if you will, for maintenance and capital works. Maintenance items are at a 60-40 split, where 60% of the maintenance cost is deemed special benefiting to the municipality that would receive the benefit. The other 40% is general levy dollars. This kind of 60-40 split came into play when there were provincial cuts back in 2018, 2019 timeframe. When that funding was essentially cut in half for conservation authorities, it was decided by the Saugeen board to what would have been the 40% being provincial grant money. It was felt that it's not appropriate to have all of the funds or all of the maintenance costs being billed to a special benefiting municipality. So for the 40% was absorbed under general levy and 60% maintained as special benefiting. For capital projects, which is, again is a different schedule in our budgeting, we do have 100% would be to the benefiting municipality. Now for these projects, we can often apply for WECI funding, which is water and erosion control infrastructure funding under Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, which would offset those costs. It is typically a 50-50 split if we do receive that funding. And we are also able to look for other funding opportunities that would offset capital project costs. And finally, the last kind of billing that we have within the same water resources program relates to category 2 agreements, category 3 agreements, or any other memorandums of understanding, any other agreements that are in place that would be billed 100% to the municipality. Next slide. So again, this is just a section from the Conservation Authorities Act that is defining benefiting municipalities and our right or our ability under the Conservation Authorities Act to determine benefit derived and bill accordingly for these water infrastructure projects. Next slide. I won't go through all of these, but this is just a few examples specifically for category 1. As I touched on earlier, what category 1 are our core mandates. So any of the water infrastructure projects, so that's kind of the focus of today, are deemed category 1 when they are SVCA owned. Next slide. For category 2, they are offered, or there is an offering right now for a category 2 agreement with SVCA when a project has historically had some level of SVCA involvement, whether it be maintenance or inspection. And we've partnered with the municipality in the past to complete that work, but we are not the owners of that structure. We don't have an easement, we don't own the land. It was essentially our involvement kind of came from a mutual interest historically that we've maintained. Now that bill changes have come out, we do need formal agreements in place for those structures to continue any involvement on them. So very quickly, going to go through all of the structures that would be special benefiting and some of the category 2 offerings in the municipality of West Grey, trying to address the items that were requested in the delegation request. So to start, the Durham Upper Dam is owned by Saugeen Conservation. So this would fall under a category 1 program and service, which is why an agreement is not needed. The primary purpose of this dam is ice management for West Grey. It is being operated to control frazzle ice. I'm not going to read all of the slide, but the costs that you see here are the very typical maintenance expenses. This is not 60% of the dollar figures that you see. It is the $23,500 is after the 60%. has been, the 60-40 split has been applied. So this is what would be billed this year for 2024. And capital projects, again, would be 100% to the municipality, looking to offset that with WECI funding. Okay, slide. So the Middle Dam right now is owned by MNRF. I understand it is up for sale, but SVCA does have a license of occupation, which essentially means that it is a Category 1 project. That was signed in 1987 and does continue until 2036, where SVCA is responsible for inspection, like high level inspection in terms of like daily work. We don't do in-depth engineering inspections on that site, as well as operations. MNRF is heavily involved with dam safety reviews, formal inspections, safety inspections, of safety equipment, all related to that structure.
And that one, in the event of a sale of that structure, that license with of occupation with the SVCA would be null and void, correct?
It is our understanding that it would be null and void. Yes. Okay. The Durham Lower Dam is owned by Saugeen Conservation as well, making it a Category 1 project. Purpose of this structure, we believe, is for community access. It does have the trail across the walkway, recreation, and just the natural amenity for the residents nearby. It's not offering any benefit to SVCA. We don't operate it that way. It also does have a small component for ice management for the municipality of West Grey, as we do have a configuration that we put in place specifically to help with ice. Yeah. Okay, talking about ice, in our budgets as well, under maintenance, there's a separate line item called Durham Ice Management. This relates to the enhanced monitoring that staff undertake to be aware of ice conditions and essentially operate the dam as needed to ensure that frazzle ice is not causing a problem in the community. As you can see, expenses year over year have been fairly consistent, but they can vary based on the type of year that we are seeing. As of late, now that we're getting more freeze and thaws and just more cycles of ice formation throughout the winter months, we are having to be more actively involved with our monitoring, as well as more frequently pulling boards and reinstalling them after to address changing conditions. We're certainly seeing different winter months than what we have historically. So that is affecting some of the expenses related to our ice management. Ownership, it's not really a structure, it's more of an activity, but it is jointly done. Municipality of West Grey has staff that monitor more in Moffat's Hole, I believe, downstream of the lower dam, where SVCA does more extensive monitoring with the lower dam, upper dam, and further upstream as well, so that we know what's coming. Slide. For Newstat flood control works from New Creek, we currently have agreements in place with landowners for the work that was just undertaken. But key note for this one is there is a weir that is part of the New Creek flood control project. It's in a slightly different spot downstream. The weir, we do not have any easement for the property. It is located within, I believe it's Lions Park in Newstat. So SVCA does not have an easement. There's no agreement in place right now for us to maintain that structure, and we don't own the land. So this is a very good example of a Category 2, where if the municipality wishes to have SVCA involved in the future, we would need an agreement in place that clearly spells out what our level of involvement is. And we have proposed that to try to address the most recent, or as many items as we can in the most recent external inspection. So the Category 2 offering, I believe that you've seen before, and the costs here just break down what was being offered by SVCA. It's important to note that right now, these are maintenance and inspection costs. All capital works are not included in Category 2 agreements, and they would have to be a separate West Grey Council motion to the SVCA board. And our board ultimately directs staff to continue with capital works. Newstead as well, we have Newstead Creek, which is the smaller system that runs through Newstead. SVCA does have easements along all of the properties or all of the private properties. West Grey offering for category 2 is related to the right of ways. Now, historically, some of these, when I spoke about Lions Park and right of ways here, this happened across the board with all municipalities where when these projects were formed, there was never a need to get an easement across a municipal property or municipal land because there was always kind of an understanding that it was no issue getting access or that we were partners in this, right? We were funding partners. We have discussions about projects that are coming up. So there was never a concern historically about needing an easement, as it was just kind of implied that we had approval. With the bill changes, now we do have to formalize those agreements and make it known that the municipality would like our services on all of those municipality or municipal owned properties. So for Newstead Creek, the offering for category 2 is for the roadways only, or the road allowances, as SVCA does have the remainder of the project is category 1, given that we do have easements in place. There's no additional cost for this because we're out doing the other 90% of the project. So there's no additional cost to continue the inspection. We would inspect everything up to the right of way at this point. So it does make sense in our mind anyway to just continue because we are out there doing that work for the remainder of the project. And finally, Newstead Dam and flood wall. We have confirmed with, we've had lawyers involved and looking at ownership across the board for all of our structures. We're certainly part of the way, but there's a lot more. But Newstead Dam is one that we have recently firmed up where the owner is the municipality of West Grey. And I will provide those documents to municipal staff following the meeting. At one point, the purpose of the dam would have been for flood and erosion control. Certainly the flood wall still does play a key component in flood control for the municipality. The dam is not operational right now, so it's not actively being used as a reservoir to hold back water in flood situations. But there is kind of I guess a channel where if floodwaters get too high, a board gets put in to ensure that water stays within the channel as opposed to spilling out onto the street. So all of the Newstead Dam and flood wall would be a category 2 offering, where if you choose to sign a category 2, we would put up signage, restrict public access across the walkway based on the latest inspection report, and do our inspections. Okay. Slide. So there were a couple questions or a comment or notes, I guess, in the delegation request about liability. We can speak generally to liability, but ultimately the liability that rests on the municipality of West Grey will have to be something that you discuss with your insurer. We're trying we're asking similar questions with our insurer and our lawyers right now, but that's not necessarily transferable to how the municipality would be impacted. We can certainly assume that we have been partners with in these projects and their maintenance, inspection, and their funding throughout history. So we can, I would think it's safe to assume that there would be some liability that would carry on to the municipality, but what that looks like is something that staff cannot answer because it's a discussion with your insurer. But generally speaking, the upkeep that you have on structures, the maintenance that you have, your awareness of inspection and risk, and trying to do everything that you can to mitigate those risks are, of course, all actions that would reduce liability and risk. So just moving forward, for all category 1 projects that we talked about, again, are considered mandatory for SVCA. So we will continue operation and maintenance of that. Maintenance for category 1 projects are approved in SVCA's budget. So those will go forward. Capital projects, we do either need to be approved with municipal budgets or through council motion. For the other structures or just other options to move forward, there are the category 2 options or category 2 agreements that have been presented. If the municipality wishes, we can explore transferring license of occupation or looking at transferring ownership or easements to the municipality if that's desired. We would of course have to bring that back and make sure that that is supported by the SVCA board as well, but it is a potential option that could be explored. And we could also look at removal of infrastructure. That's it. Thank you for the opportunity to present.
Thank you for the update, Elise. And would you entertain, if there are any questions, would you entertain that or? Certainly. Now's a chance. Anybody? Councillor Hutchison. Doug?
Yeah, so thank you for your presentation. I do have lots of questions. I'd like to maybe break it down and maybe look at each elephant in the room because we have many elephants in this presentation, I believe, each dam representing one. So I do appreciate that over the years, Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority is an integral part of what we do and how we control our water going through our West Grey. I think it's really important that we work together for sure. But I do have some questions and some concerns in some of the things that are presented here. So I'd like some clarification. If we could start with the Durham Upper Dam. So in the Durham Upper Dam, first of all, it does state that Saugeen Valley owns that dam. So that's good. So it's a category 1, you said. But my concern comes when it comes to the capital side of it. It looks like a lot of the capital side falls back onto the municipality in terms of, you know, like the upper dam is going to need some major work in the near future, somewhere along the lines of $750,000 worth over time. Can you explain how that works? Like I know there's a wiki grant in there, but how is it that you own the dam, but we're the ones that have to fix it? Is that correct?
So I know it seems confusing, and sorry, through you, Kevin, or through you, Mayor. There is an item in the Conservation Authorities Act, and that's the one that we have to continue to fall back on, that if a municipality is the benefiting, we are able to bill those expenses to the municipality. So given that, yes, it is category 1 and it is SVCA's, we do have the power of authority under the Conservation Authorities Act to bill that money back to municipality when it is special benefiting.
I agree. Like the dams in Durham in particular are, like, I think of it as our gold versus our curse, right? I mean, they're very valuable. We need them, but they also are very expensive when it comes down to this point. I just find it a little curious in some cases that some of the things in here seems like all of a sudden all this has come to head. I know the government funding thing is part of it, but there's been things here, like for example, the safety boom in the upstream at the dam. In 2021, it was recognized that we should be doing something to further safety, and they also talk about an inspection report about safety and so on. I'm just curious why 2-3 years down the road, all of a sudden it's important to get done, but why wasn't it done 2 or 3 years ago? And you know, maybe it wouldn't cost us $300,000 at this point. So I was curious about that. Why do some of these things all of a sudden hit the fan now? Can you explain that?
You want,
I can try.
through you, Mayor. When I came to this position, there was not any external inspections that had been completed on the structures. So recognizing that we need to understand all components of structural stability as well as public safety components, that was when we took the proposal to our board of having all structures inspected by an external engineer. So it wasn't necessarily everything. It does seem like everything kind of hit the fan at the same time, but this information, historically, staff were only completing internal inspections. And now we just recognize the need for external ones and that they are the experts in these structures. So it has brought to light a lot of different guidelines, best management practices for the safety of these structures.
Okay, thank you. I have many more, but if somebody else wants to jump in here. Yeah, so that's good. And I understand, I think the inspection part of it is great, that, you know, we have a handle on what we really need to do going forward, because these structures have been there for a long time, just like our bridges, they're there for a long time, and all of a sudden now we need to do some work on them. I was just a little bit curious when here it mentions in this one and also in some of the other reports about lack of paper trail or lack of documentation when it comes to working on these dams. I hope going forward that we have a better record that we can fall back on, because it seems to me we've been missing some documentation. Is that correct?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and through you. Yeah, I as acting GM, certainly I'm coming to all this very fresh as well. Not my typical role or responsibility on the water resources side, but we do now have a qualified professional engineer with Elise now. How long have you been on with the authority for now, Elise? Almost 5 years. Wow.
Total.
I hired her. Yeah, I hired her as a regulations officer initially. Then they stole her from me to go be water resources manager. So Elise's hiring and placement in the management role of a new position with regards to water resources is an indication from the authority that this is a significant DOSIT or department with a lot of work to be done. And Elise is certainly taking big strides, I can say, in my 6 months overseeing her. Execute the information, to get the authority the information we need to be able to make good plans and good proposals and get back to municipalities what we need to do on each of our structures and move forward with each of them appropriately. You know, over the years, resources coming and going, staff expertise coming and going in water resource position has posed some challenges, of course. But yeah, we're definitely moving forward with Elise now in the role, qualified to do so, and bringing some unpleasant information forward, much the same as you referenced though in your municipal bridges. You know, it is infrastructure aging is the reality of much of the Canadian municipal experience right now, and the authority is somewhat having a reckoning on our front, as you see though represented well and outlined very specifically in the assessment reports was the ultimate name that now West Grey has been provided from our office for your structures, and that extended right across the watershed. So there's other municipalities getting the same information, and difficult to learn, but necessary in moving forward.
Thank you for that. So yeah, I agree. I also recognize that our dams in Durham, upper, middle, and lower, I don't think there's, personally, I don't think there's any way that we could ever live without them. Newstead Dam's a different kettle of fish, but so as far as removing them, I don't see that happening, at least not in the near future, but maybe sometime. But it's so valuable, and even the upper dam is so valuable to the park, right? Which is Saugeen Valley's park. So without that dam there, we would lose that swimming area and all the recreation that goes along with that. So I think it's very valuable. So I hope in the future, going forward, that we can work together to cover some of these costs. I know you said it's category 1, but yet we're looking after the capital side. So between the funding and whatnot, I hope that's Conservation Authority that we can work together to fix some of these dams and going forward, and it doesn't all fall back on the municipality. So that's my wish for that. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. Just a concern, and I'm not sure if these are the ones that can answer that question, but with the category 2 and 3 now and what you've shared with us about, you know, whether it's maintenance or capital, and how it's being downloaded to the municipalities, which we too, unfortunately, have experienced lots of downloading, not from just yourselves, but others in this economic times. But my concern is the levy isn't changing from all the downloading that you're putting on to the municipality. And I was just wondering why that wouldn't have lessened, than, you know, keeping it the same, even though we're gonna be taking on a lot more costing on, you know, with the category 1 and 2, or 2 and 3. So if you could have any explanation as to why that wouldn't have lessened. Thank you.
Thank you for the question and through you. Yeah, it's certainly as I was coming to my first budget, taking over this position in July, I somewhat had a similar assumption that indeed, if some options were being given to municipalities, if municipalities weren't necessarily taking us up on every option, therefore the overall cost, or at least the levy cost, would be anticipated to go down. And what I realized in doing our SVCA budget, proposing it to the SVCA board, and what the board ultimately did also acknowledge and understood was something a little bit more insidious, a little bit more intricate, was that this legislation to change conservation authorities came from a provincial government very, very focused on the GTA and very aware of the GTA situation. Where in the GTA, the Toronto Region Conservation Authority is a massive conservation authority with very, very broad and many different departments that get very far from what we now know as Category 1. You know, they got restoration departments, they got treetop trekking departments, many different things that the province had interest in constricting. You know, that those weren't necessarily costs that needed to be borne by municipalities. So they created a piece of legislation that very much addressed those issues. What they didn't take into account is how smaller CAs are already doing their business. So in the case of the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, for an example, the Category 1 goods and services that they now told us are mandatory wouldn't have been what we and our board would have called mandatory last year. For instance, our parks, our lands, our trails, up to this year, before the change to the CA Act, we wouldn't have called those mandatory. And in fact, we were looking for basically those to cover their own costs. What the government came in with initially for this categorized, and they called it initially core programs, with regards to CA Act changes, didn't include parks. And then they realized that they then would be the author of parks potentially closing. So they quickly pivoted and included parks and lands and forests in the Category 1 goods and services. But in the rural context, that then gave us more mandatory stuff to do at a small CA, at ours specifically anyway. And that then changed sort of the economics of what we then are going to back to municipalities with, because we were told we must keep our parks, we must keep our 21,000 acres running and healthy and managed, and there's a number of other deliverables we have to have for them now. So we actually, with the mandatory programs and services that they assigned us, they gave us more costs in essence. And ultimately then to exist as a conservation authority, to exist with the Category 1 program service, they say we have to, then in essence that pool of money that we then had to ask levy for went up. Offset slightly by, yes, the loss of, unfortunately, an environmental education department that we lost at RCA. The loss of a stewardship department, which we lost at RCA. So would have been savings for, remember, municipalities and levy, then offset by something else that the province said was suddenly mandatory, which our board did, recognize and say, well, it is not necessarily a bad thing. You got to keep your lands and forests in good shape, and that is an amenity for municipalities as well. But yeah, a real interesting dichotomy whereby they targeted what they understood a CA was, which missed somewhat, I believe, the rural context, such as the Saugeen, which was already authority cutting quite close to the bone and being quite lean, we thought. They told us what we had to do even more and above and beyond, and what we ought to charge levy for. And that's, I believe, and then my understanding of how the budget process worked and what our board ultimately did agree to and understood, that's how there was savings, and then we lost those savings with the additional Category 1 program. So I hope that's answered the question, or at least given some perspective into it. And it'll, but that's as much as I was able to sort of glean from how this process worked, and our board ultimately did approve our budget and understood that same issue. So thank you for the question.
But in saying that with the parks still generate a fair bit of revenue. Am I correct in saying that? So
Yes.
whether they're category one or wherever else they were placed in the budget over the years, there's still a revenue generation. And that hasn't changed. So the expense that is added in because of it being mandatory to category one is certainly still offset by the revenue generation, whether it be through the forest management or whether it is through camping or the horse park at the Saugeen Bluffs as well. So it didn't add a huge amount by saying it can't be categorized over here on in this side of the budget. We'll move it over here and it's increased dramatically. I guess I'll say I've had those conversations with Laura at the board as well too. Hence some of the voting that how it happened for the budget. Just to your point, Joyce. And is there any possibility of changing or doing things slightly different in a more effective way now that how they are being proposed or being legislated by the province on those programs, on how we do it? We're still doing it the same way we always did, but yet legislatively from the province, you were told to do it differently. Correct?
Yeah, through you, certainly the board and staff will continue to, as the year progresses and as additional budgets move forward in the years to come, there will be opportunity to reassess what we are offering, where we're offering it. And you're absolutely correct, your worship, that yes, we didn't move, well, suddenly we can call our parks category one. So now all Durham's camping, all Saugeen Bluffs camping is suddenly on the municipal shoulders. It's not what we have done. We have more so gotten back on with regards to the camping, certainly cost recovery on that. They were always that. We've kept it there. It was then with regards to those non-revenue parks that is the more of the shift that I was describing and seeing. But absolutely, the board of directors, as designated by West Grey and all our member municipalities, will continue to guide staff on what the appropriate measures are relative to the new legislation that we're seeing and the new reality, and we can and will adjust as needed.
If I could, one other question. How do we determine who is benefiting? And I guess this question is more towards the Mew Creek. How much land does the municipality own along on the Mew Creek floodplain in Newstead?
I'm through you. I'll certainly pass this list very quickly, but we would be the municipality would be owning, I believe, the road allowances only in the majority of the Mew Creek erosion and flood control structure, which is, as the small system moves through town, private. We have easements, or I should say the authority has easements on those to keep that, to install and then maintain and oversee that project. Then it hits a municipal road, which is 20 meters, 21 meters or so, which is then municipal owned. And then it would then go through that pipe, get back into another easement on a private property, working its way down. Does it hit a park or something along the way as well? Does it get in the Lions? I can't. It does eventually.
So you were Newstead Creek or Mew Creek?
Mew Creek.
So Mew Creek.
I think you were describing Newstead Creek, Eric.
So Mew Creek, majority of it is along private property. It does end at the road allowance, and then the weir, as I mentioned earlier, is in the municipal park. When we're talking about benefit, it is benefit to the landowners, yes, which are private landowners. But as I noted earlier, SPCA, under the Conservation Authorities Act, the landowners are benefiting, but they're residents of the municipality. So we do not have a means to bill landowners. If that is something that would like to be considered, then you could consider a bylaw to make sure that costs are kind of being offset and directed to those landowners. But we do not have the means in our act to be able to build them directly.
So is there any billing directly to any of the landowner, private landowners on other parts of the Saugeen River system? Hey, a private landowner, a farmer who's having erosion problems, and takes it to conservation to remove some of that damage that's being done to his agricultural fields, or imposement onto his property. That would be between the private landowner and conservation authority to those erosion programs.
Through you, there used to be, I believe it was in the late 70s and 80s, there used to be provincial funding that the authority could organize to, 80 cents on the dollar, help landowners do a project to help stop erosion on their property. And we'd actually had that equipment at a time to actually do the work ourselves. It happened all along the South Saugeen River, very laterally erosive system. Those aren't happening anymore, no. So if there is an erosion issue that the landowner is recognizing, either municipality or private landowner, that they want to do work to address, they would certainly come to the authority, and they would be subject to the permit review process. But there would not be the authority will then come and fix that erosion and give you a bill for it. That is not a service we're offering lightly, certainly. Just the permitting and review side to ensure that that erosion project is going to have a permit, and that permit would ensure that it's not going to negatively impact erosion for that landowner or surrounding landowners, as well as not have a negative floodplain impact, more so the typical permitting role that you know us to have.
So if a landowner had done some work like that, and there needed to be remedial or maintenance work 30 years later in 2025, but conservation had done that, very similar to what Mule Creek was with these gabion baskets and whatnot, there would be funding, and it would be billed back to the municipality at that point in time.
So the agreements, or through your worship, the agreements that Eric was referring to, I have seen, and they were very clear in that SVCA completed the work at the time. We would only warranty the work for a period of 6 months, but it very clearly outlined for all private landowners that there was no maintenance moving forward. The work was complete. Any other follow-up was on those landowners. Mule Creek came about because of essentially a desire from the municipality to have the project completed. So it's kind of different in who initiated. If the landowner initiated at the time, then we did sign those agreements, which we don't have any active like that. But Mule Creek, as well as Newstack Creek, started with a council motion that asked SVCA to become involved to adopt the project, and then carried on.
And hence carry it on with a 100% levy charge, what happened back in the 70s when Newstead created these two systems. But today, none of that happens. It's all built back to the municipality and or your capabilities of finding some WECI funding to offset the conservation's cost into this for the administration and oversight of the projects.
I don't believe for Newstead Creek that the original construction was ever billed back to those landowners. I believe that it was always a municipally driven, municipal benefiting project for those.
But we haven't found what at that point Newstead was being built. The change is the municipality of Newstead probably was somewhere in less than 10% at the time, maybe 20%. And today, the municipality of West Grey being succession to Newstead is 60%.
Yes, it was 60% plus, of course, you
Plus.
have a portion that is general levy and capital. Yes.
Plus. Hence the frustration with these projects. and what how it's been put back onto the back of the municipality for a small benefiting portion. Anybody else? Doug?
So speaking of the Mute Creek, my first question is, do we really need it? What happens if we don't maintain it or take out, like what flooding is going to, you mentioned about the Lions Park, that's along there. But homeowners, I'm not sure which ones would really be affected if there wasn't any flood control there. Do we know?
For Mew Creek specifically, there's kind of the two parts, one being the weir. The weir does act for energy dissipation right now. So if you were to remove or not maintain, it would certainly just be potential to have significant erosion downstream, which we actually have seen in the past. And I believe it was only a few years ago that the municipality initiated a project there for a private landowner to help with erosion. For the section further upstream, which would be just upstream of the Queens, I think it's the Queen Street Bridge. That one it's erosion protection, but it's also acting as a retaining wall. So if you did not maintain or that wall was compromised, you would be at risk of losing all of those buildings and potentially taking out the roadway through Newstat. It is acting to hold up those buildings and the municipal infrastructure that is the road. So that would be a consideration.
I guess going forward, maybe being that we're all looking for sources of funding, maybe that's something we acknowledge in the future, is that maybe some landowners are going to have to pay if we're doing conservation work or flood control, as the government's saying it's municipal thing, but when maybe we say, well, maybe the landowner has to kick in, just like our municipal drain act, which we have, which is part ownership, part landowner, part municipality. So yeah, so maybe that's some way of doing. I just wondered because obviously there's, falls back on us again, and the cost of fixing these things and who really benefits. If it's not, the municipality's not benefiting, or not totally benefiting, maybe the landowner needs to share the cost. So something to keep in mind going forward if we're looking for money. Maybe that's one way of doing it for sure. Since we're talking about the Newstead Creek or Mew Creek, can I just throw in a couple things here? I'll go on. So it talks about no public safety signs. Again, I'm curious over the years why we didn't have that, and I guess maybe because now we're doing inspections and we're looking at all the safety issues, that there hasn't been any safety signs associated with flooding in those areas in the past. Is that correct? Correct. Right. Okay. And also I already mentioned about inspection reports, but it states in here that routine inspections would be completed and documented, whereas in the past it didn't sound like that happened too much. So that's just another piece that hopefully we'll have in the future. I do have a couple questions about the Newstead Creek, if we want to go there. Okay. So yeah, Newstead Creek, and it's another one of those ones that, as the mayor has maybe mentioned, is like who's really benefiting? Is it municipality or the landowners? And I thought it was interesting in your report, it talked about all the people that are using it for storing stuff on the gabing baskets, or they have their walkway bridge across it and whatnot. So it really becomes part of their backyard, but yet we're controlling the flooding situation there. It brings to mind, it'd be interesting. Coming up this week, we have a report about the Durham Creek. There's going to be a presentation. So to me, it's somewhat similar. Like there's a lot of property owners that have this little creek that goes through their backyard, but yet we tend to sort of maintain it and try to do some work. And so where we end up going with that, I don't know, but it would be interesting to see what comes out of that, and maybe we can apply some to the Newstead Creek. But again, easements, it talks about easements. We do or we don't. It says to inform the local property owners about the presence of the easement on their property, as well as acceptable uses of their lands within the easement. So again, some of these things, issues are sort of things that all of a sudden have sort of raised their head, like, why has this happened just now? Like, I mean, this has been there for years and years, and right, and people are, they should have been aware of it, but for some reason they weren't, or they chose to ignore it. So I'm curious about that, and maybe, I'm not sure if you can speak to that, but I just thought that was interesting that it was in there about, you know, how it's being used and so on. So, did anyone want to respond to that observation?
I can offer a brief comment through you, your worship. At the time of the inspections, some of the information too was, you know, we were trying to assess where we're at with everything. We didn't necessarily have all of the information available, as most of our files are hard copy files still. So even in terms of inspection reports, we have been able to locate some more historically. Those comments were just noting that maybe we didn't have a consistent frequency year over year. They were still being done internally, but maybe just not a full program, which is where we're trying to move now. In terms of communication with landowners, some of those comments came up because we were approached by landowners when we're walking and doing the inspection. Some were aware of why we were there, others weren't. It is certainly an item that is in our recently approved strategic plan to improve communication across the board about with landowners of, you know, you do have a property that has an easement on it, this is what it means, and trying to create a program where we do have just enhanced communication with the public, and that is across the watershed that we're aiming to do that.
Yeah, that's great. So again, the whole education piece, and I know where we're at. And unfortunately, as it says in here, a lot of these costs are going to fall back onto us again. Like, for example, the signage and railings, like these are things that they've been there for years, and now all of a sudden we're going to put more signs up and fix the railings, which is interesting, but I guess it's good that we do it sometime, you know, let it fall down. But also the $70,000 for sediment, removing sediment. Again, maybe, you know, as we educate the landowner that, you know, this is the easement and we're going to do this work, maybe we build some costs into that budget and say, you know, you're going to have to pay a little bit of money to help maintain this channel. I don't know, but like I said, the Durham one maybe will help us understand how this is all going to come to fruition. So just thought that was just made note of that in there. So thank you.
Jeffrey, please.
Yeah, I think Doug's doing a great job, so just keep going. Yeah. So I was still wrapping my head around some of these basic concepts. So for example, at the Upper Dam in Durham, which you own, and you've had some external inspections of, typically previously they would have been internal inspections, but now you've gone external inspections. And those inspections have determined that things are required, like, what do you call that, buoy system around? Buoys?
Like a safety boom.
Boom, yeah. That's required, had never been required before. So that seems to me like an upgrade to the facility. So you own the facility. You've hired an inspector to say that the facility needs to be upgraded in a certain way. So you upgrade it and then it gets billed to us, I believe, fully. And we have no say in the matter. Like, what if we think that's not a logical or sensible addition to the facility? Can we have a discussion about that? Or so it's two-pronged question, or it's a backdoor question, I guess. It's about the nature of the inspection. So why did you switch from internal inspections, which didn't seem to require that we needed a boom system, to an external inspection, which now requires that we have to have this additional cost that we bear? Couldn't we go back to the old system, just doing internal inspections and not having a boom on our budget?
To you, your worship, the staff that we're completing, or we're recognizing now the need for external inspections because of the nature of dams. They are specialty projects, and recognizing that staff internally may not have all of the ability to recognize the deficiencies of the dam. We may not have, you know, or at least historically may not have the familiarity with all the regulations. We are not dam experts. There is certainly value in internal inspections because we're able to see it seasonally, and that feeds into external inspections, which are those experts. So it's not that it wasn't necessarily needed before, it's just now we truly have expert advice saying that these are the regulations, these are the guidelines, these are the best management practices. Specifically related to the safety boom, if we did not decide to pursue that, we would certainly have to look from a liability perspective, the use of the dam for public. Is it appropriate to have the public swimming in close proximity when we don't have an appropriately designed safety boom in place? So we might have to consider, we certainly could consider whether that's feasible to remove the requirement, but do have to understand at the same time the liability and risk that is there to both parties if we do not have that in place.
And if I can support Elise there as well, there is deliverables this year that is requiring us to have a more detailed review of all our structures and our approaches to ice management, things like that. So again, the CA Act is indeed, if we hadn't have produced this sort of in-depth review of our structures, the CA Act would be requiring us to as well. So again, maybe for the best, as much as many of my staff have discussed, many of the things we're being asked to do now this year associated with the CA Act are more internal, asset management plans, ice management plans. Good that we do them. Required now for this year because of the CA Act, deliverables due in 2024, requiring us though to do this in-depth look as well. And ultimately then, bringing about the obvious need for some adjustments on some of our properties, some larger amounts of work, some painful information certainly coming in via that, but not really optional for us not to do the review and have the experts look at these structures because of the things we're being asked to do in 24 now. Yeah, even if it wasn't appropriate for us to have engaged up to this point anyway, as we know, ignorance is not bliss per se when the rubber hits the road on a dam or some piece of infrastructure.
So will we be doing these external inspections regularly, or is this just sort of a one-off situation?
Your Worship, the plan and the recommendations that were in the report were to have an external inspection done annually for dams. Some of the other structures are once every 5 years, just based on potential risk associated, failure, etc. So we are proceeding on the basis of external inspections annually, and staff will complete internal ones seasonally to help inform those external inspections. So we are moving forward with a more set frequency of inspections. We'll be maintaining that to ensure that the dams are, or at least we understand what the condition of the structures are.
And this annual inspection cycle, going from no external inspections to annual inspections is quite a ramp up. This was a board approved move forward, I presume. Maybe I could look at the board members present.
Through your worship, the external inspections were included in the maintenance budget, which was approved by the SPCA board. So.
Yes, went through at the budget count. The budget was not unanimous. It's done on a weighted, thank you. Deputy Mayor, on a weighted system, and I think it was 81 to 19, somewhere around that. 80-20 was the way to vote on the budget this year. Of that. In saying that, though, are our annual inspections a requirement and or a external? Are they regulated or a requirement from the Act or anything else?
Through your worship, they are not required under legislation. They're a best management practice, and SPCA staff would continue to support having external inspections, recognizing that we are not dam experts. We're more than qualified to complete internal inspections in the interim. We are not the experts, and we do have aging infrastructure that we're approaching end of life. So it is very important. Staff feel, anyway, SPCA staff feel that it is very important to continue those inspections.
So with that being said, there is no requirement on any private dams that are on the river and or other structures to absolutely have them.
Correct.
Make a comment on that. It's just a statement for myself, not a question.
Okay, would you like a response? Could I offer
I'm
one?
offering you that, yes. Eric.
Okay, I'm just
Go
checking.
ahead and make a response.
Just
That's the
checking.
question.
Just checking through you. There's been lots of questions that have come to us from all municipalities with regards to what's happening on private dams. You know, there are many throughout the watershed. Why aren't they, dealing with many of these things, or at least we don't understand they are. You know, when Williamsford flood happened in 18, it was our talking point was, who was opening these dams and why and under what legislation that were seemingly and understood to then be flooding the downstream private landowners, all private dams, no municipal ownership as far as anybody could tell. Not West Gray, so we can speak plainly here for the most part. Yes. It was clarified that indeed, yes, it is up to each dam owner to have the appropriate, the confirmation that they're structurally sound or not, that they ought to have an operational plan with the Ministry of Natural Resources. That ministry is not coming around and checking what those dam configurations are every hour. So really, who held the chips, who held the cards, and ultimately, it is somewhat understood generally. Again, you got to get that legal opinion with regards to that specific issue. That if you have a dam and you take the approach that, well, it's been there 100 years, it'll probably be there another 100 years. I'll just leave it. I don't need to inspect it. I don't want to inspect it. I prefer not to know. When it fails, it almost certainly is going to be your liability as the owner on whatever the repercussions are downstream, which might be quite significant. A dam can be very severe issues downstream or upstream or on the property. With regards to the authority's ownership of many of these structures, fortunately or unfortunately, many of them in West Gray, the authority and our Water Resource Committee does continue to field many of the questions that have been discussed here and are really important to the member municipalities that are ultimately, being asked to foot the bill for them. And the Water Resource Committee, and then directing and giving advice to the board of directors of the authority are very much considering and concerned about these issues. And I definitely suggest that West Gray continues to bring your interest to the board and also to the Water Resource Committee. Your staff will certainly be working heavily with Elise to bring those comments and concerns that they're hearing from you forward. And that'll certainly guide what the authority is doing on the West Gray structures. In large part, as you have a big piece of the infrastructure puzzle from the Sauget Valley Conservation Authority's perspective. But yeah, they are a difficult and inevitably aged infrastructure right across the watershed, and West Gray is no exemption when it comes to erosion and flood control infrastructure.
Just want to make one statement first, Doug, and then I'll get back to you. In saying that, that's very interesting, the way that the dams are operated now in the ice management plan since 2005, but saying that the operations of those dams and the flooding that's caused downstream would be a liability of the dam owner and or the operator of those structures. So in 1997, there was a very major flood within the town of Durham, and obviously it should have been the operator that was liable for that flood because of their lack of understanding and operations of those dams at that point in time. Interesting that somebody would. I don't think that there was any liability laid back on the operators of the dams at that point from there, but I guess we've learned from some past experience from experience, not from expertise or knowledge of how those dams should be operated for the benefit of the municipality. Sorry.
Yeah, so I do think the inspections for the dams are important, and I think to know where we're at, especially we do the same thing with our bridges. And it's nice to know that down the road, this is what you have to do to maintain them, and hopefully you don't get any big surprises like tomorrow we have to, we have to repair a dam for $1 million plus or whatever. So I think it's good to have that. I was just curious about, in here, your report talks about that you're going to complete a dam safety assessment and review for the dams, and it's a $75,000 cost. So we do have a dam inspection report in front of us, but this is sort of more around the safety aspect, or why is there another report to come forward regarding safety assessment and review? It's not covered in this inspection?
No, the inspection was meant to be a high level of everything, a little bit of public safety, a little bit of operator safety. A dam safety assessment is much more robust. It looks at every single component in a lot more detail. Again, has to be completed by an external engineer. I speak mostly because I've seen the one on the middle dam that MNR does pay to have. And it is so much more in depth on operator safety, public safety than what this inspection report offers.
It sounds like you're planning on doing this with all of the dams. It says 75,000, but that may be less because you're going to do it in a wider circle of dams, and maybe there'll be costs coming down or whatever. But that's something on the radar that's supposed to happen in the near future. Is that correct?
Your worship, we would certainly be looking at cost savings opportunities from doing multiple ones at the same time. Also, we can have WECI offset some of that cost. In looking at which structure we would tackle or which structures that we would have done at the same time, we're also looking at what is the anticipated life cycle. So for instance, right now with the upper dam, we're currently going through an EA process to figure out what's the next best step in terms of rehabilitation versus replacement, because we are there with the condition of the dam. So it's not, in my personal opinion, it's not a worthwhile venture to have a very expensive dam safety assessment done when the structure or the rehab could change the dynamic of the dam. So that would be something that we'd be looking to do whatever, like after a rehab, or depending on what comes from some of those studies. We really need to look at life cycle, how much time do we think we have left, and make sure that it's a worthwhile venture, because it is a significant cost.
I do have a couple other questions, but it's on the Newstead Dam. So, and I know we haven't really talked about the middle dam, but that's a whole nother ballgame, and it's probably not a topic for today, knowing that's not, that the ministry owns it. So, but the Newstead Dam, so my question is, you've recommended that within the next 5 years that we remove that dam. The dam, apparently, you said that the dam is owned by West Gray. When did we take ownership? Because I don't see anything here. It says like when your historical thing, when did we end up buying that dam?
Have the date, oh, wait, hold on. It was actually part of the amalgamation. So the parcel right here, just pulling up. The parcel was transferred to the Corporation of the Village of Neustadt in 1982. And then we have in 1982 as well, an instrument that went along with the purchase or the transfer of property that acknowledges the dam and the Village of Neustadt's responsibility to rebuild the dam, repair it, alter, or amend. So that was 1982, and it is still under the Village of Neustadt, but with the amalgamation.
So my question with that then is, so it's just the dam. It's not like, because the mill, it's very, very close there, right? It used to be the dam, a part of the mill or whatever, but so it's just the dam, not the mill, right? And so my question is, if we remove the dam, how does that affect the structure of the mill? Because I'm sure there's going to be some shared cement walls in there. So is that going to be an engineering nightmare to try to remove that dam without affecting the mill?
Your worship, I think it would certainly, when we're talking removal of the dam, you would have to have some extensive studies done to understand the upstream and the downstream impacts. And that would be something that they would have to look at through modeling of what that might look like for the mill. There's also things you could explore with partial removals. We've seen Truax at a partial removal. So if there's components that are necessary for the mill, that could be explored through those studies. But it's not, unfortunately, just as simple as saying, get an excavator in and pull it out. You do need approvals in place from under the Lakes and Rivers Improvement Act, and you would need studies to make sure that you understand the upstream and downstream impacts, which would address the mill.
The dam right now there's no function, like it's not preventing any water from going down the river, is it? It's just, it overflows the dam, right? There's no boards or anything in it. So my other question is, why do anything? Why not just leave it and fence it off like you suggested, safety issues, fence it off and just leave it and let it deteriorate over time?
I could help through you. Similarly, my comments earlier about if a dam fails, the owner is potentially partly responsible for the impacts downstream. So in the event of that dam's failure, if it had a negative impact on the mill building and the owner, interested to keep that building together, of course, or the downstream or upstream landowners, in the event of a failure as the municipal owner, you could be held responsible, and as well as the environmental degradation that would happen, the sediment trapped behind it, released downstream. The Department of Fishery and Oceans can and has recently in our watershed had taken interest in dams being removed that didn't happen quite right. And in the case of Mildmay, I'm quite aware of. But yeah, that would be the risk there. And but an environmental assessment would, I think it was initiated on that structure years ago, didn't get very far, but would inevitably be part of what do we do with the structure. And there's options: leave it, do nothing. What are the costs? What are the risks? Up for the principal of that project, the municipality, to consider what those options are and the appropriate way forward. There's the leave it, do nothing. There's the take it out in every way and at all expense possible, with benefits and drawbacks to each. And that would be in front of the municipality for consideration in that project. Again, yeah, the liability of an owner leaving a dam and it failing can bring about those downstream impacts or upstream impacts. That would be, I think, a concern from my awareness here. I would help with an earlier question that you said, what is its impacts on water moving through that structure? We would understand that it would have interaction with the Newstead floodplain. Currently, there is a flood shield, I think, still as a part of that dam. That is an actual active sheet that would be put into, I think it's slots, that in the event of a flood, we would come, or we is loosely, yeah, the fire department would come and put this into place. It would deflect flows into the channel, keep them into the channel in the event of a major flood event coming down that river, keeping the water in the channel a little bit more. So it serves a bit of a function there. But every one of these dams have these nuances, and for us to have all those details available to you right now. But yes, in the range of what do we do moving forward, if we were to establish a Category 2 agreement, we could work with the municipality a little bit easier, bring them everything we have to this. I know Elise did for the last number of weeks work very hard to get the confirmation of ownership from our lawyers that you just received, because it wasn't clear in that report you had there. But we did work Elise, I should say, worked tirelessly to wrap that or button that up very nicely, and great that she did that, especially for that comment. But it's a challenge there. But anyway, in the Category 2 agreement, we could work together with the municipality while we continue to do what we have been doing there over the next 5 years, button it up, decide on the appropriate way forward together. We will still be available if the municipality says, no, just give it to us, we'll figure it out. We'd still be offering that up, but it would be a little bit less collaboratively, of course, as I think you've indicated an interest to work together to address these things. A Category 2 recommendation is certainly what our board is offering, what we're offering and suggest for that structure.
Well, that would be part of that $100,000 EA assessment that's stated in here, looking at that happening over the next 5 years. Is that correct?
Yes, that would need, we would need funding if we if category 2 was signed for this dam, we would also need a motion because that would be considered a capital project. So for SVCA to lead it and to apply for funding, we would need a motion from council requesting that SVCA staff be involved with that EA process.
Speaking of the flood wall that's put in there, when was that flood wall put in? That runs basically from the dam up around the mill towards the brewery.
1991.
And was it reinforced and re-upped in 2002, 2003, when the stormwater was done by the county and the municipality on the main street there?
I don't believe there were any changes to the design of the flood wall following that work, but I could confirm with engineering
Yeah.
drawings. I could check our records.
But that flood wall was put in to alleviate that problem of the firefighters having to put in the sheeting.
Mhm.
Correct. So the sheeting really isn't a factor anymore because the flood wall's there to direct any of the water back in to the main stream. I believe that's why it was put in, for the safety of the firemen and whatnot. Because I've talked to some firemen that back in the 80s did put some of that in so that the water didn't come over when the dam was operating and ran water right down Main Street.
Yeah.
Down to Queen Street and around the corner at Granny's and the bakery as we know it now, and back into the river at that point. So there's some of the operations there. I don't think have been really totally updated in the operations of that dam over a number of years. Just, you know, but that will come out if we do the assessment of how to figure out what's to be done going forward with this structure organically. Go ahead.
If I could, yeah, and I think that really highlights the need as councils highlighted already for us through you, that the collaboration between our organization and West Ray, your staff, the amount of experience you have even on council as well, really can support our work and making sure we have the full picture and vice versa. In each of these structures, which have each of them their own story that goes back many, many years, as we've heard at the Upper Dam, at Newstead Creek, at Mew Creek. Yeah, a real need and importance to work together for the appropriate outcome, certainly, and highlighted exactly with what you said there, Your Worship.
Thank you. Okay. Are we satisfied? Any more questions? Doug one, Tom, Scott, you've been very quiet, so yeah, the rest of us, just remember from here on in for the rest of the meeting, you guys are carrying the load. We've carried the load on this one. Councillor Hutchison probably won't have anything else to say. Oh, now Councillor Noon, I've jinxed this. She jumps up now. Joyce, go ahead.
Thank you. Just clarification. Working with Public Works over the years, like if a road needed maintenance, like it was just done as needed. In a report provided by our Public Works Manager for the Newstead Flood Control Works, Newstead Creek, although there is no cost to the Category 2 agreement for this structure, there is maintenance activity estimated by Saugeen Valley at a cost of $70,000. This is related to removing vegetation and repairing some of the gabion baskets, which are negatively impacted hydraulic capacity of the structure. Would vegetation, when it gets to a certain point, like when you're doing your internal or, inspections, would you not see that vegetation is starting to become overgrown and that prevention is done? Like, to me, some of these reports are like more reactive than proactive. So in saying that, I was just wondering if Saugeen Valley maybe should have done more prevention with these sorts of things so the costs don't get so escalated. So it's just a thought I wanted to share with you.
Yeah, through you, certainly the amount of work in any given year is immense. That I'm sure your municipal works departments would would also appreciate and pass on. And in the priorities that our staff and the available resources we've had, we've been assigning them and allocating them as appropriately as we can. But there is more work to be done tomorrow, I think. And I think that in my brief exposure as the general manager to this docket, I think that that's largely where I understand. Yes, we would have wanted to do so much every given year, but there's only so much time and so much resources. And we continue to bring to our authority the needs, and Elise and her arrival in this role she's in has really brought forward a lot of the awareness of some of these things and really heightened the awareness, producing the report that you see and directing us now to do a little bit more, a lot more in some instances. That is moving us forward. Would we have wanted to do more every year up to this point? Every staff that would have been in a similar role to Elise's up to this point probably would have said yes. We would have loved to do a lot more, but there's only so much resources, and we'll continue to through our budgets, through our board of directors. At a staff, we'll bring forward our recommendations for how much we can and can't get done. But ultimately, yes, the levy does matter. The special benefiting costs coming to municipalities obviously is a concern. And it's a balance every year to see how much we can get done, how much money we can get to do the amount of work that we want to do and need to do and should do and challenge. But we've to this point in my review of this item, somewhat from outside looking in, we've done as much as we could have, and we had very dedicated staff putting in extra hours to do all of the good work we need to do on each of our structures. But has it necessarily been enough? I think the report that we now have in our hand indicates that it maybe hasn't been enough to this point. But a desire and interest to move forward, certainly. And this is a tough conversation to have, but a necessary one so the municipality understands the challenges we're up against and our challenges together, given that many of these structures are indeed yours or our project together. Any additional?
Yeah, I can just note too, for Newstead Creek as a great example, it does mention vegetation. This is vegetation that's inside the channel, which is not as simple as going in and just cutting it out, which our staff could very quickly do. This is work that, because of the depth of the channel, we do have to get excavators in. It's a much bigger activity than just vegetation control along the top, which our staff have been very active in doing. So it just kind of depends how we get equipment in. You wouldn't bring an excavator in for a small job because it wouldn't be worth mobilization fees. So I don't disagree. This maybe could have been addressed sooner, but our staff have been as diligent as they can, and this is unfortunately an activity that our staff wouldn't be able to do without some heavier equipment.
Thank you. Okay, Tom? Oh, very good. All right. Mr. Shea, Jeff?
Just curious, are you involved with the Durham Creek public review that's happening this week?
Yes, I've been coordinating it on behalf of Saugeen Conservation. Yes.
So will the Durham Creek end up having a status like the Newstead Creek? Will it be something that you guys will be actively involved in maintaining?
Your worship, no, this is just a floodplain mapping study, so we are not doing any erosion control work. It's just understanding the extent of the flood limits. So SVCA is involved again because we applied for funding and have been coordinating the project, certainly alongside municipal staff, but there are no easements to maintain in the future. It's just a study that says that will be used by regulations, can be used by municipality to just inform future decision making, but there will be no SVCA involvement other than our involvement in regulations and permitting.
Okay. We've probably extended just slightly beyond the 10 minutes that we usually have for delegations. Thank you very much. I gotta say, and to your point, Eric, we're at the point where some things should have been done 25 years ago, and we're trying to catch up on these things, and now's the best way to do it. And it is a very delicate or awkward or whatever other adverb you want to put in or adjective onto it. They're difficult conversations, but yeah, we've got to have them, or we'll be passing it on to the next generation if it ever gets that far before the disaster could hit and the liability lands on us. So we're thankful for you coming today, and we're starting the process of being able to get on top of it from here on in. Elise and Eric from the municipality, and how do we best get together and coordinate this is that if for the benefit of not only the conservation or the environment itself and the river system, but for the return on investment from what we're going to have to put into this, the best way to do that. So again, thank you very much for coming in, and I think we'll time to move on. And it looks like a couple of councillors are saying that it might be time just to take a small break ahead before we get on with the rest of ours. So we will take 10 minutes. Let's try and be back by 10:30, give or take. Yep, that'll give us 4 minutes. Well, let's say 10:35. Be time everybody gets back. Okay, take a break. Excellent, okay. Ashley? There we are. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. Welcome everybody back. We have no more delegations. I think we've used up our delegation time now till June. Perfect, okay. I'll let you do that then. Public meetings, we have comment period. Is there anybody who would like to make a comment? We have, you have one? Okay, yep. I was gonna say we don't have anybody in the audience, but can be sent in. And Jamie, please.
Thank you, Mayor Eccles. This is a comment with respect to item 11.2.3 on the agenda from Lori Alice Martin respecting the Newstead adult roller skating. And the comment is as follows. To whom it may concern, a large group of us are avid roller skaters who would really appreciate the opportunity to attend adult only over 18 years old skating session at Newstead Community Center. Ideally, Saturday night, 7:30 until 10:30 p.m., as many of us still work and live a distance from the community center. Since roller skating has been around so long and is becoming extremely popular again, those of us that skated in our teens years ago would very much benefit from an adult-only session and are more willing to travel a distance for a 3-hour skating session. We were all children learning at one time, and we encouraged the young ones to have the opportunity on Friday nights to not have to skate around the fast-moving, older, and experienced skaters. As much as we all enjoy watching the young children that are anxiously learning the fun sport, we as older adults, some of us are active and quite agile seniors, are not able to fall and get back up uninjured as fast as the young ones. Mixing experienced adult skaters with young children learning is a safety issue. We just don't feel safe when a child might dart out unexpectedly or fall down in front of us while we are skating at a good pace. The young and often unpredictable moves of the children skaters are a hazard to us. We're not trying to discourage the young ones from skating at all. In fact, we encourage it. I actually have 4 grandchildren that dearly love the sport. We are just trying to make the sport comfortable and safe for everyone to enjoy during separate sessions. I can't stress enough how perfect the floor at the Newstead Community Center is for roller skating. As experienced skaters, it is by far the best floor around. Having an adult-only session will bring a considerable number of experienced skaters that truly enjoy the sport and are dedicated skaters. We have been skating since we were young. Guaranteed they will be quite willing and happy to pay $10 for a 3-hour-long session that feels safer for adults only. During COVID, the Newstead Community Center was rented privately for adults to roller skate, and we cheerfully paid over $10 for 3 hours of skating, just to keep it successful since the numbers attending had to be limited for COVID health reasons. I truly believe that an over 18 session, 3 hours in length on a Saturday night will be a huge success and profitable for the Newstead Community Center. As a group, we have added our names to a very lengthy list of adults that are interested in this program. As older adults, we feel like we are 18 again when we have our roller skates on. Please consider this.
Okay, thank you. Ashley, do we have anybody online for comments? No? No? Okay. Thank you. We'll take that into consideration when we're moving forward with other items, that item on the agenda. Unfinished business, none that we're aware of, Jamie. Adoption of the minutes, 8.1 was the adoption of the council minutes from February the 6th. We have a mover and a seconder to adopt those. Councillor Townsend and Deputy Mayor Hutchison. Any errors or omissions? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Then that should bring us down. Committee and board reports, none. Correspondence. We've had them in the package. Is there any ones that we would like pulled? Jamie.
Three miracles. Just before we get to the information package, there is an item at 10.1.1 from the Association of Road Supervisors respecting potential municipal operator course. So there is a motion contained within that piece of correspondence. If council would like to move that as it is, somebody could just move it and second it, and then we could insert our municipal name into that.
And maybe next time I'll turn my mic on so anybody can hear me what I'm saying instead of just my lips moving. Okay. So we have that moved and seconded from the AOR's operators course. Any further questions or comments? Call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Then the correspondence package. And you will note that we've got asterisks within that when it was produced. So that it'll give us a good idea of which ones we have already supported there. And there's a couple, but is there any that we want to pull and have further discussion on or take action? If not, oh, sorry, Councillor Hutchison. Doug?
I'd like to pull and support the one for the Hanover. Hanover has about economic prosperity, social and economic prosperity review.
So Doug, you'll notice that that asterisk is right there. We've already supported something very similar to that. And I believe
The asterisk. Oh, okay.
the other one is number 12, which would be the Western Wardens, is very similar to it as well too. But we have supported that
Okay,
from another.
all right.
Okay.
All right, so then the other one, I have just a question about number 10. Are we an unwilling host in terms of the multiple municipal energy working group? I know there's lots of discussion in the past, but I don't know if we ever made a resolution.
This one is, I'd like to do a little more work on that one. I think what they got in here from the way I read it is this is the, not necessarily dealing with battery powered,
No,
but it's
Go back
wind
to
turbine
windmill.
stuff.
right. But I think that's
And
the reason why, is the comeback of wind turbines.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we can,
We can leave
I
it
should-
and whatnot. We just don't want to get caught off guard like happened in the past, right?
Yes.
Where all of a sudden they came into our municipality and made all these agreements, and then it came to council, and it's like, well, we already have an agreement
Mhm.
with the owner, right? So where are
Yeah.
you guys?
And that was the province.
Yeah.
It didn't matter whether we said we were unwilling or not, it was gonna happen.
Right.
So, anyway, yeah. But do we have a motion to accept the correspondence? Moved by Deputy Mayor Hutchison, second by Councillor Forster. To receive the correspondence as presented. No questions on the motion. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? No, that's carried. Okay. Now the staff reports. We do have an individual, and welcome this morning, Manager Aikens. Jeff, just in the sense of time, can we slightly change this? We have a individual here. Not that, if there's any value in that time from Bruce County, but I think this one's probably 11.1.3. Can we jump to that one?
We can, and with that, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce Adam Stanley. Adam is the Director of Transportation and Environmental Services at Bruce County, and as you noted, he's here to assist us with item 11.13 on your agenda.
So we'll start on that one, 11.1.3. And Jeff, what do you got for us? Your report.
Summary of my report is Bruce County has a bridge in Walkden, commonly referred to as the Durham Road Bridge. There was an inspection on it. It was put under an immediate weight restriction, which required an alternate truck route for any truck that exceeded a certain weight limit. Very similar scenario that we would have with any of our bridges. So Adam is here today to talk to us about an alternate truck route agreement as part of the southerly part of the route. Goes through Newstadt, West Gray, specifically Newstadt. There's just shy of a kilometer of West Gray roads that are part of the route. So what you have in front of you is a draft agreement and an ask.
Okay. Anything else in that? Anybody, any comments? Oh, sorry. Councillor Hutchison, Doug?
Yeah, so as part of the agreement that there's going to be a section repaved, I presume after the construction or construction of the bridge is done. What about other roads that are being used like this? They talked about this one section being, are we being compensated for that, or is that just a normal, how does that agreement work in terms of, because they're not just using that one section, they're using all the way around through Newstead and north. So how does that work?
Be careful what you ask for. We don't want that road. Yeah.
So through you, your worship, I'm going to turn the question over to Adam.
Thank you for the question, Councillor, and through you, your worship. So the agreement would be specific to the concession 10 East / Queen Street Road through Newstead. It wouldn't cover any of the other roads secondary to that. Now, the agreement speaks to the maintenance that needs to be performed through cooperation. I believe there's an agreement with South Bruce that they maintain that section of road on behalf of West Gray. We're working with their operations crew to make sure that it's increased to the class 3 county level. So that's the specification there. And then we will also be painting a yellow line and fog line on that section of road, which it currently does not have now, just to allow for that increase in class. The secondary roads that you're speaking to, we are going to be coming up on half load season here. So I would assume probably near or around March 1st. West Gray is typical of all the other municipalities. We'll likely be posting those half loads, which would restrict the heavier loads heading down. So I don't assume that there would be any major damage to those other roads. At least that would be our anticipation. So thank you.
Yep, further.
One other question, and maybe this is for our director. If I have the section right, we have a development that could potentially go just west of Newstead. And I'm just wondering about sewers and waters. Like my understanding is sewer and water is partially down that road, but not completely to the west to this development. Is that something, am I in the wrong area? Is that something we're looking at maybe doing before? How's that going to work? If we're going to repave this road, it's too bad to repave it. And then somebody comes along and says, now we have to put water and sewers to this development. And when that development happens, that's the question, right? But there potentially could be a development to the west. Am I right? Am I right? Right. Okay. So I didn't know if our director was aware of that and what.
There's a draft plan of subdivision been on that property for a number of years. Yeah. Some of us more than half our lives, and some individuals in this room, it's more than their lifetime that's been there. Sorry for picking on you, Ashley. Did you want to comment on that, Carl?
Yes, thank you, your worship. So we have had a meeting lately with that potential developer just to discuss what their proposed plans are. That draft plan of subdivision is coming up for renewal, I believe sometime in April. So they will be coming, making a request to council for an extension of that draft plan approval. He still didn't provide any definite timelines on proposed construction at this point. Does look like it is moving forward. And it's something that we would have to discuss with that developer as well as with our manager of public works, just to figure out exactly what the timing will be and how that's going to all work. But right now we have no expectation of that work being done for probably at least 2 years. So that's sort of the timeline we're at right now. That may change, but right now that's sort of where we're working on.
I think this is a good opportunity to maybe put a little pressure on this developer, because this has been ongoing for a number of years. But if we're going to repave that section of road, we'd want to do that before, we want to do our water and sewers before we do that, right? So I think my understanding too, I think the last time this developer came to us, we said that this would be the last time that we would extend it. So are we going to get back into now we're going to extend it again, even though we said we were done extending it? This is an opportunity to make it work. It's either do or don't, or off the pot, or whatever they say.
I think maybe we would take that into consideration in working, but the motion that's in front of us here is that and I'm gonna ask Director Stanley on that. We're fine with putting in this amendment here in the way that the presentation is put, and that we could work with you if there is development going forward of when that milling and paving would be done.
Thank you, through you, your worship. We would definitely work with Rescue on the timing. So if you wanted to delay it a year, we could delay it a year, or if you wanted to work with the developer and have them put their sewers in first, we can surely come in after and do that top lift of paving. So, yeah.
Okay. So we've the project itself would be 2024 into 2025. Is that the expectations on this?
Thank you, and through you, your worship. Correct. We're anticipating to get at the fix to try and get the bridge back to full level of service as soon as possible. We do have an open Schedule C environmental assessment that we need to address at the same time as all this. So there are a couple pieces at play. We want to get the fix done immediately. However, the full comprehensive view of the bridge, whether it's rehabbed or whether it's replaced, needs to go through the environmental assessment process first. So there's probably two parts to this. We're probably doing the fix on the joints to make it safe, to continue the heavy load, and then coming back to fix the rest of it. Or if the timing works out that we can get through the EA at the same time, maybe we can continue on. So the anticipation is work will start in 2024. It is possible there may be work in 2025.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Townsend? Doug?
Thank you. Just, I guess for our manager, Public Works, that Newstead corner there is a kind of a nasty one. Is this going to create any issues there, or do we anticipate any trucks coming up from the south and then getting to Newstead to the Granny's Corner and then just deciding they need to make a left? That's going to be a nasty. Now, understanding that it's county road, I don't know whether we would request they throw another stop sign in there on the east-west portion or not. Just a concern.
Through your worship, I believe Bruce County has done a very good job of signing the route. However, that is something we can monitor, and if we feel it's warranted, we can discuss that with both Bruce and Grey County about adding an additional stop sign if warranted.
Okay. We have somebody. Scott? Councillor Forrester.
Right, I'm on the understanding that there's going to be work in Bruce County on Highway 9 between Clifford and Malamay. That detour route, it doesn't go through Newstead, does it?
Thank you, through you. We're actually attending a session with the Ministry of Transportation March 6th to get more information. We've requested a lot of that. We have worked with their approval and permit process, and they've indicated that the section of Highway 9 that runs north and south impacted by that actual construction is very small. It's less than a kilometer that they're working on. It's just as you head south out of Walkerton there after the set of lights. So as they adjust their detour route, we'll adjust ours with respect to Highway 9, but I don't foresee it impacting Newstead.
Very good. Okay. That information. Any other questions? If somebody would like to move the motion as presented. Councillor Townsend, Deputy Mayor Hutchison, and comment. Tom?
I think we added an amendment to it, or just something on it for to have discussion with us prior, or we're going to just go with that.
Yeah.
Pardon me? Okay, I just want to make sure that's captured. Thank you.
Okay. So, yeah, to your point, Tom, The amendment is that, yeah, we'll have language in there in the agreement to mill and pave that 800 kilometers. Could you do that?
Let's double do that.
800 meters from basically the county line to the Queen Street corner. Okay, that's good. Any other questions on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much, Adam, for coming over, and look forward to working as always with Bruce County Transportation. Because West Gray shares probably as much roadway as anybody with Bruce County Transportation, north and south. Very good, thanks. Okay. So something very less controversial, 11.1.1, Category 2 Programs and Service Agreements. Mr. Aiken, we've had a bit of discussion on this morning. Your report, anything else you would like to tell us?
No, we discussed it at your last council meeting, and I have no new additional information, nor do I see a need to my report or its recommendation.
Okay. So the report is there, and the recommendation is to enter into the Category 2 agreements. We have somebody that would like to move that. We can get into the discussion. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Shea. Questions? Councillor Hutchison. Doug?
I think I've asked a lot of questions this morning, but just wanted to clarify, the Newstead Dam, I think I read somewhere where they said that they were willing to negotiate an agreement for 5 years, but after that, they didn't want to negotiate anymore regarding the Newstead Dam. So does that mean we have to have a plan in place to do whatever we're going to do within 5 years and either get it done or we're on our own? Is that the understanding on the Newstead Dam one?
Jeff?
Through you, your worship, is my understanding that the intent of the agreement is 5-year transition back to us. I'm the one who said in my staff report, the advantage of the 5-year agreement would allow West Gray to work on an action plan. What that action plan is, we don't have an action plan today, but upon entering into the agreement, then that would be an internal work program just to figure out what we want to achieve during the 5 years and what that would look like.
But as far as transitioning back to us, we own it. So we don't have to transition back to us. We already own it, right? There was some misunderstanding who owned the thing, but they're saying we own this dam since 1991 or 82, was it? So basically it's just, we have to make a plan what we're gonna do with it. And they're saying, take it out. We can decide to do whatever we want with it. We own it, right? So, but they're saying, take it out. So anyways, DA will clarify, will give us a plan, right? And that's what we decided this morning.
I don't know whether we decided that or not this morning, but that was a suggestion from the conservation two individuals that were here of what we should do. Was their suggestion. Okay. If I'm clear, I just want to make it clear, in all of these Category 2 agreements or the subsections that are in them, there's a 90-day exit clause, or it is an exit clause 90 days before the end of the agreement. Jamie?
Through miracles, yes, that's correct. We can execute execute our right to withdraw from that agreement anytime during the span of the agreement, with the exception of the last 90 days. We would have to notify them of our intent to withdraw 90 days prior to the end of the 5-year term. If we don't, then we're stuck for the remainder of those 90 days of that term.
Yeah. Tom?
Just for clarity, the several Category 2s we have, this would apply to a single one and not the bulk of them. So if we want to take one out, we can do that as chip away, I guess is the easiest way to say it.
Through your miracles, yes, the recommendation in the manager's report is that we enter into separate category 2 agreements. So if by chance we did want to withdraw from one of them, it wouldn't affect the others.
Thank you. This is a question to our treasurer slash acting CAO slash, I don't know, yeah.
First time that's been said here. Yeah, very good. Welcome, Carrie.
We've been doing a lot of talk on water and bridges and dams and all that stuff with the conservation this morning. There's a lot of dollars attached to the dams and the structures and everything. We'd almost have to implement a separate line in the budget process to accommodate some of this water related expenses that could occur in the next 20 years. And with replacing dams, the cost of them and getting the funding for them and putting money away for them, what kind of a levy hit are we anticipating here when we start doing all this? $500,000 here, $500,000 there, 4 million to replace a dam, maybe, where we've got to start putting money away now for the future. Just, and I know this is a pie in the sky question, but what kind of dollar figure do you think we should be looking at on the levy every year to accommodate putting a fund together to accommodate water and bridges or dams?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. We do have a separate conservation area authority budget. It includes our general levy, our category 3 levy. We did put an estimate in there of what we anticipated for if we entered into the category 2 as far as the operations and maintenance. But we definitely need to beef up our capital side for all of our structures, even the category 1 items that are in there, not just the category 2, depending on the direction that we decide to go on the long term is for the, but yeah, we're definitely underfunding it. It will be something we'll need to look at if we want to keep going forward. Like all of our assets, these aging structures are hitting their end of life very soon, and we will potentially be hitting large expenses. They will apply for WECI funding to help alleviate some of the costs, but again, it is dependent on approval of that program for as long as it continues to be in place. But we definitely need to increase. We do have a separate budget category for it. It includes our special levies for the maintenance items on the category 1 structures, the ice management programs that they have. But where those future capital costs is what we're not funding adequately enough yet.
Good question to make us aware of what's possibly coming in front of us. And again, it's trying to figure out, is that the right capital estimates, or are those the right things to, what we're going to do, where a couple of dollars may end up going. Okay. We got the motion moved and seconded. Any other questions on entering into the category 2s? With conservation?
Another question when we get into the category 2s with respect to the the Mule Creek and the Newstead Creek. There was some conversation this morning when the conservation was here too about looking at some of these waterways almost as a municipal drain and how that affects the neighboring property owners who are benefiting from the work on those items as opposed to the municipality as an overall whole. What process would we need to look at if we were to go down that road and look at trying to look at it like a municipal drain and have some of the neighboring property owners incur some of the costs to maintain these things. Is that something in a category 2 agreement? Is that where we would opt in, opt out at some point during the category 2 agreement, or is that a whole other animal unto its own?
That sounds like a bylaw that somebody might make up and whatnot, going through that. It'd be a financial thing. Oh. Madam Acting CEO.
Thank you, through
Carrie.
Mayor. Yeah, if we want to pass along, the Conservation Authority can only pass their charges along to us as a municipality. If we want to further delegate that onto property owners, that's a separate agreement between the municipality and those property owners. Not to say that it can't be done, but we need to engage those property owners, get agreements in place, get those registered on title, so that similar to municipal drains, those are agreements that are on title with those properties, so that then as it changes hands, people are aware that future costs will be shared XYZ. But that's a process that we would need to engage separate from the Conservation Authority. That's us trying to pass along our costs to those individual property owners that are that we're deeming benefiting along that structure or waterway.
And I think, as Manager Aiken has said, entering into these agreements at this point in time, well, that's right, they started January 1st, so we're a little bit reactive onto this, but going forward, working out different scenarios and it gives us the time to do that going forward, and the option of acting on those scenarios. It doesn't have to wait until 5 years. So staff will be diligently trying to find ways of making this more effective and efficient. Correct, Mr. Manager? Jeff?
I would hope that would be one of the outcomes of the action plan.
And I was thinking it will be one of the action plans. Yeah. Okay, good. Any other questions on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Boundary Road Agreement. We had one of these on the last council meeting, I believe it was, with Southgate. Just getting these renewed and whatnot with our neighboring municipalities, and how much we're helping out Chatsworth. They do about 8 kilometers of road and we do 10. So yeah, just how much more efficient and effective we are than Chatsworth. And I'll make that known to Mayor Mackey coming up. Anything else on this agreement, Jeff?
Just 2 minor points. Yes, you are correct, Your Worship. It is the staff report and agreement are very similar to what you saw for Southgate. In my staff report last time, there was a question about the summer maintenance, so I've tried to beef up the staff report to discuss routine maintenance, which happens outside the winter control season, and there's a fairly robust definition for that in the agreement itself. And the second part, we beefed up the term part of the agreement a little bit. There is a proposed road swap with Grey County that would see a section of the Bentic-Sullivan Town line be converted to a county road. The advantage for Chatsworth is that would be the bulk of the kilometers that they look after, and they would essentially, if the road swap occurred, be very little to nothing. West Grey did the bulk of it. So the term was beefed up a bit to allow us to terminate the agreement to rework out the portion of the road that would be left at the lower tier level. But other than that, it's essentially the same agreement.
All right, good. Thank you. Do we have somebody to move the motion to enter into the agreement? Councillor Townsend, Councillor Forrester. Thank you. Any other questions on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Good. And number 4, on your report, Jeff, Normandy Arena Complex, a condenser, putting out an RFP for that. Comments? Go ahead, Jeff.
We were aware late in 2023, or actually probably early in 2023, that the condenser at the Normandy facility was nearing the end of its life expectancy. We were hoping to make it last another year or so. In the 2024 budget, we did start a reserve capital account to work towards saving it. We did have a fairly significant leak a few weeks back that we were able to repair, but the mechanical contractor that's been doing the bulk of the service there for the last 15 years or so noted that no future repairs, or it's likely that there can't be any future repairs to it, and it's at the end of its service life. We do have a small window to get it replaced and minimize, hopefully have no impact to rentals and estimated revenue for 2024. So time is kind of the essence on this one.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Comments? Councillor Hutchison. Doug?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is this replacing the condenser going to affect the spring ice? Are we still doing spring ice in Ayton this year or no?
Through your worship, yes, that is correct. And the proposed schedule is intended to ensure that we do not lose our ice at either the spring or the installation of it in late July, early August.
Okay. Councillor Townsend. Doug?
Thank you. Do we have any ballpark idea what the new condenser's going to run us? And not that we have a whole lot of choice in the matter, given the revenue impact to the ice rentals there. I think we pretty well have no choice but to do it. But have we had any preliminary ideas as to the cost of a condenser?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. We have had a bit of an estimate, but we're once we get the RFP back, we'll know for sure. We can decide. We'll bring that back to council and decide at that point what the cost is based on the successful quote and how we would propose your options for funding it. But we will provide that at the next meeting.
Okay. Is there anybody who wants to move this motion at this point in time? Councillor Noon and Councillor Townsend. Thank you. Okay, any other questions on this one? Call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. All right. Thank you, Jeff. Community Services, 11.2. And Cody? Community Services, 11.2.1. Minor Ball, Durham Minor Ball signage request. Anything further than what's in your report there on this, Cody?
Thank you, and through you, fairly straightforward report in front of council today. Basically, we have had a request come in from Durham Minor Ball to continue ball signage down at the Durham Ball Diamonds, similar to as council may have seen with the Diamond Project in previous years.
Something that's not new, it's just new
New organizational
individuals,
request.
yeah, new individuals that are going to be moving it forward. Councillor Hutchison.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with this, other than we did have a discussion a while back about how this all works. Knowing that the baseball has done this in the past and raised quite a bit of money for their organization, I believe the soccer club has a couple of signs up now, which I think they've done sort of the same thing. So my only concern is that we make sure that we do it across the board. Like if someone in Ayton organization wants to put up signs on the Ayton ball diamonds, then they can do that, right? Raising funds. So as long as it's across the board, everybody does that. It doesn't affect our arenas though, because our arenas do the same thing, right? But that revenue comes back to the arena, whereas this money is going to the different organizations. So, you know, in some ways it saves them coming back to us and say, can you give us a donation for organization? If we're saying, well, you have the sign program that you can raise funds. So my other concern with that is, do we have some specs, like in terms of size of signs, what they look like, what kind of quality? So it just isn't a hash, you know, like the ones in the ball diamonds were consistent, look good, but I'll make sure that they all look good and fit the priority. So go ahead, Cody.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, the signage would be consistent as the signage that we had seen before. So they're roughly probably about 3 or 4 feet across, balls or softballs that would have the vendor logo in the middle if a company or business was choosing to purchase a signage. With regard to your first question, with regard to the consistency across the board, as council, we don't, or as staff, sorry, we don't have the authorization to allow organizations to put signage on our property. So each request would be viewed individually, and as they come up, we would bring them to council like today.
No other clarification? Does somebody want to move the motion? Moved by Councillor Noon, second by Councillor Hutchison. On the signage request, any further questions? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That one's carried. Homecoming splash pad. Next one, Cody. We had a little bit of a splash over the weekend with Frazzle Fest. I'm not sure that this is going to be the same type of temperature, people diving into the water as what was in front of the fire hall on Saturday. Good for those people that did that for Special Olympics, but I know Ashley's got a lot of pictures of those ones, so maybe if this project goes forward, you can do some picturing down there with the. I'm rambling. Go ahead, Cody. Sorry.
Luckily, we'll be quite the other side of the spectrum in terms of temperature there with the splash pad. But again, in front of council today, a report with regards to the Durham 150th Homecoming splash pad update. As council may remember, previously when the Homecoming group had delegated council, there were potentially concerns of water capacity to support a continuous flow splash pad system as opposed to a recirculation system. After review of our water and sewer capacity, it appears as though we will have the capacity in the system to support a continuous flow system, which is the preferred system of the Durham 150th Homecoming Committee. With that being said, being able to support a continuous flow system is dependent on council and staff continuing the trajectory on the water and sewer capacity upgrades, including installation of a new well in the coming seasons. I would also like to make note to council that Mr. Rakesh Sharma from GSS Engineering is on the call as well, if council has any particular questions with regards to water and sewer capacity.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you. If we need to ask Rakesh questions, go ahead. Doug? Councillor Hutchison.
Yes, well, I know that we're in the process of either drilling or if we drilled a new well. So the water may be not so much of an issue as what about our sewage treatment? We've had discussions of what's our capacity there. Do we know our capacity for sewage treatment? Where are we at? Especially when we're talking not only this splash pad, but start to other developments. So where are we on that?
Yes, through you, your worship. At this time, we do have the capacity at the sewage plant. We actually have more capacity currently at the sewage plant than we do through our water system. So there's a couple of things that we can consider here. One, we do have the capacity, and two, we will be stress testing the sewage plant as part of the 2024 work program. And the idea would be to ultimately have the plant re-rated for additional capacity, which will buy us time until we have the financial resources to do a significant upgrade at the sewage plant.
Okay, good to know. Excellent. Any other questions? Councillor Shay, Jeff?
Yes, I am still concerned about the capacity issues. So for example, like one thing it says here is that we will only have the capacity to undertake this if we go ahead with some planned capital projects. And if we don't, we're going to have to curtail the operation of this new facility. So I guess my question is, how much impact does this have on the water and the wastewater system? Like maybe we could talk in terms of the equivalent of homes. Would this facility be the equivalent of like a home or 10 homes or on both the water and wastewater? I wonder if anyone has that sort of information.
Through your worship, we estimate the splash pad, a worst case scenario to be in the neighborhood of 40 to 45 homes.
Given the amount of strain that new development is placing on our water and wastewater systems, dedicating 40 to 45 homes worth of capacity to this recreational facility does seem a little bit indulgent. I don't know if it's too late to talk to the homecoming committee about what if they had a plan B when this project was being considered. I think that it's great that groups like the Homecoming Group and the Lions Club come to the municipality and say, we've identified a certain priority in terms of resources that we think the community would benefit from, like the dog park, for example. And we're prepared to fundraise and build it and install it if you're willing to sort of take over the maintenance of it. And in the case of something like the dog park, that seems like a great idea because the maintenance is negligible. In the case of this, the maintenance is considerable. And I don't know if the homecoming committee, when they were weighing the 3 or 4 projects that they might propose to the municipality, if the homecoming committee had as much information as we do about the demand that it's going to have on the capacity, about the municipality's current limits in terms of capacity and the amount of future development that is being planned within and around the municipality that are going to put further strains on even the new expanded capacity. So it's possible that we have more technical information about the impact of this project than that committee did. And I'm just wondering if we need to be the one who says, we'd love to hear if there's a plan B. So I'm putting that out there. I don't know if this is a question for Cody. I think it's a question for council. To just say, or maybe even to our engineer to say, is this the best project? Is this a project that we're going to look at 10 years from now and say, I wished we had never done that, and we're shutting it down and we're going to mothball it. So I just have those concerns.
Cody? Rakesh? I'm not sure just who to ask. Doug, do you want to make a comment? We'll start with
I was just going to say that we did talk about a recirculation system, right? So maybe someone wants to explain what the negative parts were or why we're going to a continuous flow versus a recirc system. Can someone explain that?
And Cody?
Thank you, and through you. I cannot say for certain that the homecoming committee had a plan B per se. However, when you're looking at splash pads, you basically have 2 options. You have your recirculation system in which the water goes into a tank, it's chlorinated similar to a pool, and then moves back through the system, or you have your continuous flow, which is similar to a sprinkler on your lawn. It keeps flowing and the way it goes. With that being said, with the splash pads, when you are looking at a recirculation system, the increased cost as opposed to a continuous flow is approximately $100,000 to $150,000 increased when you're going to a recirculation system, as well as your maintenance is increased tenfold because you have to have more regular inspections. The maintenance is a lot higher, as well as your hydro usage on the system is quite more significant because you're paying for pumping as opposed to you using the water pressure in the system. With that being said, in terms of curtailing the operation dependent on water capacity, splash pad systems are very complex, in which they have the ability to do a rotational system. So when you turn on the splash pad, it's not every single jet is on at one given time. They bounce around, so it makes it fun for kids who are playing. So we can easily tone back the water usage on the system without impacting the operation.
Okay. Good. Follow up. Jeff, go ahead.
So you said, Cody, I think that you weren't aware of a plan B. I thought I recall when the homecoming committee was starting this investigation of looking for a legacy project, that they were considering something like a music pavilion in Riverside Park as another possibility. So I don't know if you've had a discussion with them about a plan B, but maybe it would be worth having a discussion with them about a plan B.
If I may, and thank you for the question, Councillor. Yes, when Homecoming originally did approach us, there was a few different community projects in mind. Some being the bandstand you had spoken to, or the splash pad. At the time, we had come to council and requested authorization to move forward with the splash pad. If council would like to provide the direction, we can reopen conversations with the homecoming committee, looking at a secondary project. However, I would say that majority of the community fundraising has been moving down the track that it would be a splash pad.
Joyce? Councillor Noon.
Thank you. These consumption estimates, is that based on like starting May till October? Like what's the timeline that they're thinking of having it available to the public?
Go ahead, Cody.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. The water capacity measurements that Mr. Aiken had spoken to, we're looking at a full operation. So essentially going from approximately May 24 till the end of the summer. Obviously capacity would change slightly depending on the type of weather we get in the summer, but those capacity measurements are looking at a essentially a 5 or 6 month operation.
Further, go ahead.
So just for cost savings, realize when you're putting all that money into it, the longer you can have it for the public would be better, but you're looking at the financial burden of the water consumption, maybe, you know, having it from June 1st to mid-September, kind of like your summer vacation time, would help alleviate some of the costs. But I understand when you're putting such a great project together like that, you want to get the best bang for your, well, you can't say for the best bang for your buck, but the timeline you'd want for sure. Thank you.
Carl, you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, through your worship. So just to clarify, and if for clarification, our engineers online, he may be able to speak more to this, but our capacity for water is based on the max use per day. So we look at the maximum use of any one day over the previous year, and then we sort of average that out over the past 5 years, but it's based on all the water used on one day. So even if the splash pad was only open for one day, then that would create the max capacity, and we would have to judge our capacity for our system based on that one day usage. So closing having the splash pad open for the whole season or only part of the season won't affect the capacity. It would affect other things if you were going for a recirculating system, you know, looking at maintenance and electrical usage and staffing required that would inspect it on that daily basis, but it wouldn't change if it was a continuous flow system. It wouldn't change the use of the water.
Good. Go ahead, Ken. Go ahead.
Is there a recirculation system at the wading pool currently? Is it inspected by staff daily?
Thank you, and through you, yes, all pool systems would be considered a recirculation system, and it is inspected regularly by staff.
I'm just thinking that if we had two recirculation systems, you know, just a few feet from each other, the inspection and staffing would probably be optimized, could be optimized.
Yes, it could be. However, splash pad operation is slightly different from, or sorry, our wading pool operation is slightly different from our splash pad operation. Our wading pool primarily operates only Monday through Friday, whereas the splash pad would operate 7 days a week.
Has that potential. The one thing, the idea is still, I still haven't got my head wrapped around the idea that we have to, we produce this great clean water for our consumption. And you can put it on your lawn, and a number of places that are along George Street or along the Durham Creek, if you're doing watering your lawn, and it will trickle off and it ends up. How is it that we can allow that water to go? Or even further, we do our fire hydrant flushes quite a bit. That ends up in the stormwater sewer, any of that fire hydrant, and from the stormwater, it ends up in the Saugeen River. But this water can't come off the splash pad and just go to the river. Am I missing something here? Please tell me that I am. Carl?
Yes, Your Worship. So no, you're not really missing anything. Yeah, if we looked at the option of dumping the discarded water into the river, that wouldn't help with the water capacity issue. It would help with the wastewater issue. I believe that has been reviewed, and it is a possibility to do that water into the river, but there's a cost involved. The SPCA would want water monitoring as well as some chlorine removal before that water entered the river system. So again, you'd have to speak to the people who regulate that to determine exactly what's required, but that's basically what we found through our investigation, is that they would require us. And I understand your comparison. It's just the total volume would be a lot higher when you're looking at a splash pad on a continuous basis versus flushing hydrants every few months, or people watering the lawns, things like that. The volume through the splash pad would just be that much bigger.
I absolutely understand and appreciate the thought of being able to dispose of used water into our waterways. However, as Director Shiprock had outlined, there'd be many approval steps in place, including local SVCA. We'd also be seeking provincial approval and federal with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. It's not impossible, but given the infrastructure that would also need to be installed, your cost would be comparable to a recirculation system. So it may not be worth looking at dumping into the waterways.
Jeff?
Given that we have our engineer available, I wonder if I could ask for his comments on how much impact on our long-term ongoing water provision and wastewater system this facility is going to have in his mind. If he thinks it's negligible and not going to make any difference in our long-term planning, then I have no objection to it. But if he thinks it's significant and it's going to impact our capacity to entertain future development, et cetera, then I would want to have more discussion about it. I don't know if that question is specific enough, but you get the gist.
Well, I think it's specific enough. Are you still with us there, Rakesh?
Yeah, I am still on the line, and I did hear the question. Can everybody hear me all right before I proceed?
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Perfect. So we had looked at the capacity assessment for both water and wastewater at the end, as of the end of December, or let's say November of last year. And what we found was that we had roughly about 156 cubic meter per day of capacity left for the water system. But for wastewater, it was much higher. So in other words, we are in much better shape for the wastewater treatment plant as compared to the water supply. So if we do allow this water to be used, the spare capacity that we have available, we have to make sure that we continue to work on the water supply well. And we do upgrade our water supply system because it looks like we will run out the water supply faster than we will run out of the capacity of the wastewater treatment plant. So the construction of the well, the testing, taking the permit to take water, completing the EA, I mean, we could be looking at about 3-year plan, 2 to 3 years program. The other subdivisions, the new subdivisions, I mean, I don't think they are there yet to start using that additional water demands. And the existing Sunvale and Bruce subdivision, they are already accounted for in this assessment. When I say that we have about 156 cubic meters per day left capacity for water supply, that already allows for any deduction for Sunvale, Bruce, Rockwood Terraces, including splash pad. So splash pads were considered to be equivalent to about 45 homes. Did I answer the question?
I thought that there were, that we were near the limit. I don't know if 156 cubic meters is near the limit or if it's got ample room for growth, because there are 3 or 4 other developments being talked about, including one that we might be spearheading ourselves. And my understanding is that they cannot be approved if we don't have capacity. And so I don't know if we're creating a bottleneck on future development because we're very close to the capacity. Like, I don't know if 156 cubic meters translates to 5 homes or 50 homes or 500 homes.
That would be about 100 homes.
Okay, good to know.
Carl?
Sorry, can I, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So, yeah, as Rakesh stated, the 156, it's about 1.5. So it's about 100 homes that equates out to. It's hard to know and it's hard to predict exactly, what the market will require for future housing and how, the current downturn in construction will change in the future. Currently, we do have a couple subdivisions that are being looked at. We also have some internal, not internal, but sort of in other construction projects that developers are proposing within the town limits that aren't necessarily a plan of subdivision, but they're, larger projects that could, entail, 40 to 50 units each. So I can't say. If I had to guess, I would say yes, we are going to run into a situation in the next 2 to 3 years before we get that new well online that we will be in a position that we will have to turn construction away. That's my benefit and my expertise. I can't guarantee you any guarantees one way or another based on the way things are going. But even with the system today with 100 units available, now, if you choose not to move forward with the splash pad, then we would have equivalent of about 145 units available. We've had a request from 2 developers, for 100 units each. So that's 200 units, which we've already told them that won't be available for 3 years. So how that will affect their plans on moving forward, I can't say one way or another. So, we're already at a point where we're providing this information to developers and they're having to possibly change their direction based on the available infrastructure we have. So that's, in the long run, if with the 2 to 3 year turnaround, with the amount of time it will take them to create their development and move forward with the planning process, maybe that's not going to affect them. I can't say one way or another. But yeah, I believe if, building continues to move forward the way it's looking, that, we will be in a position that we will have to turn some development away in the next 3 years prior to getting this new well installed. Again, that's just my opinion, but that's the best I can offer at this point.
Councillor Newt, Joyce?
Maybe I'm getting off topic, but this consumption, does it also include Rockwood? Like, because it's, enhancing the number of beds, the availability to what it represents?
Yes, through your worship, this Rockwood upgrade has been included in Rakesh's calculations. So that 156 meter square or cubic meters or 100 units includes the Sunvale subdivision, all of the Bruce subdivision, all of the Rockwood Terrace upgrade, and the splash pad has been incorporated into that. So once all those construction projects are completed, we would have approximately 100 units worth of construction. Because those projects have been, other than the splash pad, which is why we're here today, have been approved or provided a guarantee of service. Sunvale has been provided that guarantee through their subdivision agreement. Bruce was provided that guarantee through their draft plan approval. And then Rockwood Terrace, there was a report that came to council a year or two ago, a year and a half ago, where council agreed to provide that the water and sewer required for that upgrade. And then the splash pad is why we're here today.
Big Miracle. So if I could just carry on with that conversation. So if the old Rockwood was to be repurposed, whatever that would look like, I'm assuming we've taken that out of this equation, but if it was to be repurposed, that's going to go against this, that volume as well?
Yes, so through your worship, there's no, we have no current plan from the county on what their proposal is for that Rockwood redevelopment. That has not been included in any units. So if they decide that they want to move forward with a redevelopment with a 150 unit apartment building or something, that would not be able to be, that would not be feasible under our current. Now, again, there's, timelines for construction and development. You're likely not in, having occupancy for that 2 to 3 year timeline anyway. So it's going to come to a position where the developers are going to have to choose to decide whether they want to move forward with projects without a guarantee, right? As a developer, are you willing to move forward with a project and spend money on a project if you're not guaranteed to have water and sewer capacity at the end? And how far, as a municipality, will we allow them to move forward? Will we allow them to start development without, or construction on a house where we can't guarantee that there'll be water and sewer capacity in the system, and whether we're even legally allowed to do that? Those are all some things that we're looking at, and we will be looking at a water and sewer allocation bylaw that we'll be bringing forward to council, and that will discuss, how we're allocating the remaining water and sewer capacity.
Just one thing I would like is, Rakesh, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still.
Yeah, just for that clarification, was the old Rockwood or Rockwood today, their capacity taken out of your projections? Just want to make
that is correct. Right now, like we have allocated for additional beds that they are. So right now they are proposing 128 beds as opposed to 100. So we are making forecast for additional 28 beds only in this committed capacity. Just for clarification, as of today, the reserved capacity of the water system is 1,255 meter cube per day. But the committed capacity by way of Sunvale, Bruce, Rockwood Terraces, and Splash Pad is almost 1,100 cubic meters per day. That's why when you take those two numbers, we are left with only about 156 cubic meters per day.
And that is the whole of the Bruce, all 400 units?
That's correct.
Yeah. In which, at this point, none of them have been even started.
That's true.
Yeah, none of the infrastructure is even in the ground for that as of yet. Doug?
Yeah, so that's sort of along the lines of my question. So how long does development sit there? They say we've guaranteed them capacity, but when you have other developers come along and say, we'd like to build, when do we make a decision to say, okay, this one's not going forward, but these ones are? How does that work?
Let's get back to this question. We're starting to get on to
Okay.
development planning.
All right.
here.
Well, it's
Yeah.
sort of, it's okay. So,
Yeah,
okay, I'll throw out another question then. We're talking 2 or 3 years for water capacity for this new well to come online. When the new well comes online, then we've got lots of capacity. Is that what we're saying once it's back on, once the new well comes online?
Carl?
Yes, that's the intent, that once this new well comes online, and it's not just, having to install a well, there's all the infrastructure that goes along with it. The piping in the ground, the chlorination system and the rest of it. So, the intent is, 2 to 3 years from now. And again, there's a lot of regulation and permitting and things that have to be completed along the way. A lot of those items are out of our control or out of staff control. That'll have to be approved, federally and provincially. And then there's always the cost involved and, requirement for budgeting and approval of budgets through council. So those final budgets haven't been determined and haven't been approved by council. So there are many, many steps along the way that could affect that timeline, right? So we haven't provided any guarantees to anybody. Our intent is, we're telling people our intent is that we're working towards, having additional water capacity online within the next 2 to 3 years, but there's no guarantee. Our intent and our hope is that when we drill this new well on the Rockwood development property, that, it will provide all kinds of water, but there's no guarantee on that, right? We could drill that well and there may not be any water. So, or the water quality may be low. We've gone through every step we can take to say that this likely is the best spot and the water will be good. We've done our due diligence, and so hopefully when we drill the well, but there's no guarantee. And there is no way to guarantee it. It's just not. We just can't do that. So our intent is 2 to 3 years, and 2 years is ambitious. That is everything along the way, timing wise, has to go perfect to get 2 years. Likelihood is 3, and if anything bad happens along the way, or for whatever reason something doesn't get approved, it could be longer. We just don't have no way of knowing.
So my thoughts are maybe we need to look closer at the recirculation system. I know there's more cost involved, but if that saves us, 40 or 45 houses, maybe it's worth the money to put in a recirculation system if we're going to go forward with this. I see that it says that 2024 that where staff's going to determine ongoing costs, but it doesn't sound like the project's going to be started until 2025. So maybe we have some time to investigate further.
Just a clarification on that, Cody, I thought that the system, the splash pad, they wanted to get this move up and going and be ready by 2024?
Through you, that's correct. The hope would be to have the splash pad operational for Canada Day long weekend this summer.
Yeah. Right. So I think we're getting a little bit, it's risk. We've been producing reports and doing a lot of work on getting water here. So we can be optimistic that in 3 years' time, there's going to be a lot of water. My understanding of it, and Rakesh, we've already included it in this. Whether we take it out or not, it really doesn't have any effect on going forward. We need this in 3 years' time. The splash pad wouldn't have that. The thing with the recycling is it has a lot more cost to it. Cody, is that what you said? Staffing, you got to have a full-time staff.
Yes, with a recirculation system, your costs in terms of maintenance and operation increase tenfold, as opposed to a continuous flow, where majority of your costs are in water and sewer surcharges.
Yeah. Tenfold. Okay. Do we have this motion, Tom?
Mayor, so we went ahead with just the flow. And we get down the couple of years down, we can convert to a recycle without, I'm assuming that's something we could just add on. I don't know. Would you know that, Cody?
Through you, technically speaking, you could. However, you're pulling out a lot of you're removing all of the infrastructure except for the pad itself.
Do we have this moved or we don't? Questions or comments or move? Okay. Deputy Mayor had a good conversation, wants to move the motion. Okay, I'm gonna call the no, he does not even talk to me anymore. Okay, that's fine. Still got your thanks. Still got the thanks anyways in there, Rakesh. Very good.
Sorry, I could not hear for a few minutes of maybe 30, 40 seconds. Was there a question for me? I'm sorry.
No, there was no question for you. What there was for you was thank you for joining us, and hopefully your golf game is ready for the summer.
We'll be ready.
Okay. Again, thank
Thank
you very
you.
much for joining us today.
Yeah.
Cody, last one, 11.2.3, Newstead adult roller skating.
Thank you, and through you, this report may be familiar to council as the comment that our clerk read during comment period. Basically, we have had a request come in from community members looking for an adult-only Saturday evening roller skating. As noted in the report, I noted that there was interest of over 30 skaters. I've received updates this morning that would put that interest well over 100 skaters who have signed stating that they would like this program to move forward.
So with 100 skaters coming, they each bring one person, how much of a bigger addition are we going to need to put on to the Newstead Arena to hold this thing? Very good. Any questions for Cody on this one? Great to hear. Councillor Shay, Jeff?
Yes, how much do we charge for the current roller skating?
Current roller skating varies based on age. For children, it's $3 per head, plus skate rental, which is $3. Skate rental does not change based on age. And for an adult, it would be $5 a head, but that is for a 2-hour program. This would be an extended program. And this proposed rate of $10 was actually put forward by the group requesting. And if I may, just to follow up on your comment, Mayor Eccles, capacity would still be restricted for this program to 150 skaters. That is the same across any of our programs where we have what's called movement on the floor. So it'd be the same for public skating as well. It would be capped at 150 skaters, and that's common across the board with all municipalities. It's best practice as recommended by our municipal insurer.
Okay, thank you. And further good. Any other questions on this one? We certainly have the capacity, other than probably won't work around Lobster Fest, won't work around a couple of other functions. There will be Saturday nights when it's not available, but probably 45 Saturday nights out of the year it would be available for them.
So we have reviewed our schedule. So this would basically be a once a month roller skating program. So based on the cycle, we would be able to run essentially 12 months of the year. There may be 1 or 2 Saturdays that we can't because of the events you had spoke to, but it should be able to run fairly regularly moving forward.
Yeah. Councillor Forrester, Scott?
Right, just being familiar with that facility, I would suggest maybe the second Saturday and the fourth Saturday, because those will be the most days that we're not booked on.
You read my mind, Counselor.
Okay, any further questions on this one? Great to see certainly more use of our facilities. Excellent. We have a mover for it. Councillor Forrester and Councillor Noon. Move and second the instituting the adult roller skating program. Any further questions? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Good. Thank you, Cody. Director of Infrastructure and Development / CBO 2023 year-end building activities. Carl? Report for information.
Yes, thank you through your worship. So yeah, this is our standard quarterly report. And this one includes the year-end activities for all of 2023. In general, our building activities are down for 2023 compared to, definitely during our COVID years, 2021, 2022, but even a little bit slightly lower than our pre-COVID year of 2019, 2020. I think it's just the cost of living and the cost of borrowing right now, developers are very slow moving forward with any type of housing that's not pre-sold. To say, they're not building a lot of housing that they're just going to put on the market and hope, sells and sell it after the fact. Builders are starting to look more towards, pre-selling houses and having, the buyers carry the cost of funding rather than developer carrying that cost. So it's just slowing down the process. I believe, things will turn around, interest rates go down. We'll be right back in the same position we have been for the last, 20 years probably. We still have a housing shortage. We still have particularly, affordable housing and the smaller, semis and apartments and rental housing. So I believe we are receiving a lot of inquiries for development from developers that are looking to have developments ready to be able to move forward. I believe once, those interest rates do turn around. So everything looks positive that way, but currently this year, I think, 2023 has been slow, and I think even 22 will probably be even slightly slower than 2023, but then probably looking forward to 2025 and beyond, we'll be back to where we were, if not, a makeup for these last 2 years that will be slower. We'll be making that back to probably where we were in 2021 and 2022.
Thank you. Any other questions or clarifications on this one? Yes, Doug, Councillor Townsend.
Thank you. Just wondering, I guess then with the downturn in the building department, are we able to utilize the staff for other things? Like obviously if they're not as busy in the building department, can we still utilize that staff somewhere else so that we're getting, efficient use of all our staff within that department?
Yes, so your worship. So our staff this year will not be slow. Residential construction is going to be down this year, but we have 2 major projects being built in 2024 with a long-term care facility and a new police station, plus possibly a new ambulance station. I've also talked to the Blue Water general manager who does all their construction, and both Newstead and Durham are planning renovations for this summer. So those projects will be coming online here. I don't know the extent. I believe the Durham renovation at Spruce Ridge is a fairly small renovation, mostly HVAC and that kind of equipment on its own. I'm not sure about the Newstead, the Ayton School. I'm not sure what the extent of the renovation is there and how much work is involved, but those are always, projects that are fairly intensive for inspections and things like that. There's a lot of on-site stuff. Rockwood, the new construction, when that starts, will be, we're basically have somebody there on site every day likely. And then again, with the police station, that will also, at least at the beginning of construction, would require somebody on site, if not daily, every other day. So the answer is no, I guess.
Yeah, the answer is no. You're gonna make good use of stuff. The Rockwood Terrace though, did we not at a previous meeting contract that out to another company to do a lot of the building department work on that one?
Through your worship, yeah, we contracted out the plans review. So that plans review work has been done. We're at a point now where we're ready to issue the permit. We're just finalizing the site plan agreement prior to issuing the building permit, but the drawings have been completed. We have all the final review and letter from RSM, which is the company who did the review. We've completed our end, but we will be doing all the inspections internally. RSM, they're only providing a service to do the plans review itself. The inspections will be done, currently by myself and by Mary, are the only two inspectors currently qualified for Part 3 large buildings. But we are working towards getting the other building inspectors qualified.
Okay. All right, good. Thanks, Carl. Agreement to provide pound services. Oh, that was just for information. We'll take that. Motion to receive. Yes, sorry. Get moving on here. Councillor Townsend, seconder. Councillor Shay. Thanks, Jeff. Doug. Right. Any questions on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. All right. That brings us down to the agreement to provide pound services. Carl, anything on this one?
Yes, through your worship. So I think the agreement's fairly self-explanatory. We have the Hanover Walkerton Veterinary Clinic provides pound services for the municipality. So any dog that's is running at large or has attacked another animal or another person, we have to impound those dogs. We hold them, well, if it's a raw dog running at large, we hold them for 3 days, 72 hours, business days, and then after that they can be adopted out or moved out depending on what the options are. So we have to have a location to house those dogs where our staff picks them up and drops them off at the Hanover Clinic, but we have to have somebody or somewhere to house those dogs. So we've been using the Hanover Walkerton Clinic for probably about a year, maybe a year and a half now, and we've just decided to amend the agreement and make a few changes as Hanover Walkerton has requested that they become more involved with the adoption process, that they be responsible for the dogs after that hold time, that they would be the ones that would find homes or adopt them out to local community members or not. That's up to them. So after the hold time, they're fully responsible for the dogs. If the dogs are there for the hold time plus 3 days, the municipality is responsible to pay for that. But over and above that, the dogs could be there for 2 weeks, a month. Everything after that hold time plus 3 days is their responsibility. And any vet care after that time would be the Hanover Veterinary's requirement to pay for.
Pretty much a generic one and one that we need to have in place when we're dealing with dogs. Okay. Any questions? Scott?
So does this only apply to dogs? Because I know we had a pig last summer. There was an ad for a pig out here that was impounded.
Yes, that's correct. So we only, our animal control bylaw speaks specifically to dogs, and this agreement would only be in relation to dogs. We have an agreement with the Katy Livestock barn up in Katy that they house any other animals that we find that are outside of dogs.
Thank you, Miracles. Just to further that to Councillor Forrester. So the Pounds Act governs what we do with other animals outside of that. So the example of the pig is governed by the Pounds Act. There's certain legislation that rules and steps that we have to follow if we come into possession of an animal such as that.
Doug, Councillor Townsend?
Thank you. Just one thing in the agreement with them that, and this is more of a I guess on a personal level. And part of it here, it says that they can, you know, with any unclaimed dogs, they're going to try and find a home for them or whatever. But they can also sell them as animals for research, which personally I have a problem with, but that's a personal thing.
Okay. All right. And that was a statement. Do we have a mover for the agreement? Moved by Councillor Shea and second by Councillor Noon. Thank you. Any other questions on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay. Thank you, Carl. The next one. Jamie, you want to talk about expenses? Remuneration? Go ahead.
Thank you, Miracles. The Municipal Act requires municipalities to report on remuneration expenses paid to members of council annually. Council members were allocated $1,500 for conference registration for 2023. Expenses related to the conference, such as meals, mileage, accommodations, are not included in that $1,500 allotment. This report is being presented to you for information purposes, and following the meeting will be posted to the council page on our website for public consumption. Within that, there is a table outlining the total remuneration paid to members of council. There is one small change that the Director of Finance is going to note for us, so with respect to one of the members.
Carrie?
Thank you. There is correction to there's accrued wages for a conference attendance for Councillor Forrester. So his total amount would be $23,947.14. So the posted version will show that corrected amount for the annual salary.
Okay. Legislative requirement. Councillor Shea. Jeff?
So this is required to be posted publicly. And there's several other sorts of documents that we produce that are also required to be published. Where do we publish those on the website? Is there a category called public documents?
So through your Miracles, for something like this, it's posted directly on the council page, as that's the most intuitive location for members of the public to go and access information about council members. We do have a section on our website called reports and studies, I believe, or plans, reports and studies, where it has other documents that we're legislated to provide and post on our website. So there's kind of two locations for things like that.
Okay, great. Just because I remember a couple of years ago, or several years ago, we just considered posting them, having them included in the minutes or the agenda as sufficient to qualify as posting, which I always thought was not sufficient. So I'm glad we are posting it in a separate place. Thanks.
Councillor Townsend. Doug?
Just, and maybe our Director of Finance in our non/acting CAO role, what other things fall into expenses? Like, I understand travel, I get that, but what else falls into that expense category?
In the expenses includes mileage, conference expenses, rooms, meals, parking would be included in there as well.
Okay. Doug, Councillor Hutchison.
So I'm just going to throw something out here that food for thought for next year, but for a budget item, I'm going to suggest that we go to one conference a year. The county has already done that, and some municipalities have done that.
Yeah, he's jumping ahead again.
No, that has to do with the cost, but it fits in here because this is part of our cost, is it not? It's all part of cost.
Yeah, it's not part of our cost. It's part of our 2025 budget. So,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, okay.
So.
Good point.
I'm just
You've
saying.
made your point. You've made your point. Come on. Yeah.
So I'm just throwing that out there. Okay.
You're
I'll
starting
leave
to
it
act like a lawyer
there.
now. Yeah.
I'll leave it there.
Don't have to withdraw that, but it's a point well taken. Counselor Shay.
So we're not going delving into that, but I see that the county did reduce the number of conferences that it supports.
Yes, they did.
Which
But
is a
can we
form,
get back to this?
which is a form of downloading, I would suggest. But I did want to ask the Director of Finance, does it not include our media allowance as well? Don't we get like $50 a month for media allowance?
Not sure whether it's media or whether it's tech.
Technology, yes. So the honorary, in the wage subtotal would be your honorarium, your technology allowance, and any per diems paid for the conference. Those would be considered wages. They're paid and you get a T4 for those. On the expense side, it's reimbursement or the expenses associated with the accommodations, parking, mileage. That's different on the expense side.
Anything else? Doug, Counselor Townsend.
So will we still have time to question this before it goes up on the website? Because I do have a question on mine.
If we pass it today, it would show up as approved, but we can still look into it. We would just have to bring it back for an amendment, maybe? No?
Through Miracles. So this report is just being presented for information purposes. So if there are any inaccuracies, errors within this, we can make that correction and that corrected version would be published. There's no need to come back to council. It's strictly for information purposes. So.
Do I have a motion to Deputy Mayor Hutchison, seconder? Counselor Townsend? Thank you, Doug. Tom? Any further questions on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. All right. 11.5. 11.5.1, conference spending limits and beyond the limits. A couple of councillors through your report, Carrie. Anything else you want to add to that?
Yes, so the showing there would be if the conference registration included the social package, package A, that's what is presented. If it, without the social conference, then Councillor Shay and Townsend would be below the limits. Councillor Noon would be $189 over the limits without the social package. There's two packages in the AMO conference, A and B, the difference being the social event night, gala, if you will. So.
Any questions or comments? We would, go ahead, Jamie.
Through your Miracles, and just to add on to what Director Mighton has indicated, that social package has sold out, so that option is not available. So the opportunity for Councillors Townsend and Shay to go, they wouldn't have that opportunity to attend with that social package. So even if they continue to proceed with the registration for AMO, they would not be over the spending limit. So, and same with Councillor Noon, she would be over. However, that social package is not available, putting her down to $180, give or take, over the spending limit.
Okay, any comments? Councillor Noon. Joyce?
Based on those numbers, and I've already discussed this with the Director of Finance, that I would withdraw going to AMO this year, and going with one conference a year is fine. I totally agree with that. Thank you.
Okay. So with that new information, or decisions and the new information we have, we won't have anybody that's over. So really, this would be for information. I don't know whether we need, to adjust that, but it's just that keeping in mind of where we're at with the conferences. We'll receive this for information at this point in time. Carrie, is that, Jamie's nodding that would be good? Because there isn't an issue where we're gonna have to take some action if there was, but with that new information, there won't be anything, so we can just receive this for information. Councillor Townsend?
Just a question and being the new kid at the table. Have conferences gone up a lot in the last number of years, or is the price stay fairly consistent? And also when we go to book conferences, or we start to think about conferences for next year, is there any way of knowing what they kind of cost ahead of time so that as counselors we can choose accordingly?
Carrie?
Often the new conference rate is not out very far in advance. AMO just came out a couple of weeks ago, maybe. So up to that point, we didn't have the actual conference registration. They have changed a bit slightly. With COVID, there were a lot of online and virtual, so now they're back to in-person. So they have changed slightly. Everything seems to have a bit of an increase every year, so.
Doug, Councillor Hutchison?
Yeah, and if I think back, Carrie, I don't think there used to be a limit. It used to be that you could allowed to go to 2 conferences, but there wasn't a monetary limit, was there, in there? I know we changed that the last council, right? Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. The previous bylaw, it was allowed for 2 conferences. The previous council had changed it to put a annual entitlement for the registration. And actually it was, I think, all in conference. And then this council changed it to be just the registration fees would be within that $1,500 flat limit, and all the expenses would be covered. So it's kind of changed a little bit over the last couple of terms.
And I think the reasoning behind that was some counselors felt that they wanted to have a limit so that they could determine if they wanted, like sometimes you can take courses or other educational pieces that could fit into that package, so it didn't have to be all spent for conferences. So I think that's why we put a limit on that. But obviously now with the way costs are going up, it's a lot more expensive, and yeah, we'll talk more about it maybe in budget coming up, but I think then we maybe can make some changes.
Need a motion to receive this, Councillor Hutchison and Councillor Townsend. Doug 1, Doug 2. And any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Carrie. We're getting down. Do we need to make a motion to? Yeah. Questions? Excuse me. Any questions? Any council members? Use them pretty much all up on the Conservation Authority. Good. Oh, Deputy Mayor Tom.
Thank you, Mayor Eccles. Just a quick question to CBO. Just wondering how the police costing or if the RP's gone out. Thank you.
Carl?
Yes, thank you, through your worship. So we have a draft document of the revised site plan from the consultant. The consultant for the architect and our local consultant in Cobite Engineering have been working together, not just for the police department, but for the ambulance and the remaining property to just confirm grading and things like that, stormwater management. So that has been, say, 95% complete. We've asked for some revisions. So we just have to, we're waiting for those to come back. And then once that's complete, The architect has completed, RFP documents and things like that. So once the drawings are complete, the RFP will be sent out for costing.
Thank you, CBO. Is there any concern that we're getting further into closer to the spring and we may kind of be losing some of the potential developers that we could be hitting on by taking other projects?
The intent is to have the RFP out by the end of February. So with the return date, I don't know exactly, would take the architect's recommendation on return time, but if we have it out by the end of the month, I've been told that there's no concern from the architect, so we're working towards that date. And then hopefully that will all come together.
Okay, thank you. That gives me some sense of security that you've got that under control. Thanks again.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Noon, Joyce?
Thank you. And the question, can I ask a question referring to something that we've already discussed, like at today's meeting?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, well, it's regarding our last issue with the per diems for council. We've received the farmland form 2024. Would those registration fees be part of your costing for within that $1,500? It's $140 registration fee.
There was one that came out this morning for a one-day conference for farmland. So to register for that, I think what Joyce is asking, with her not going to AMO, that would allow you, yes, I think absolutely, it would be $140 out of your $1,500 allotment. So am I correct in saying that? Yeah.
Okay.
You'd be
Thank you.
very much good for that.
Thank you.
Good. Anything else? And we can move on to right after we hear from Councillor Townsend.
Thank you. Just back to the CBO, and you're talking about the plans and the engineering for the property in which the police station will be part of. We haven't determined what we're doing with the rest of that property yet, have we? Like, I know there was some initial drawings showing, houses and an apartment building and stuff like that. We haven't determined that that's exactly what we're doing yet, though, have we?
I can't remember the exact resolution that came from council a few months back when we brought that forward. We have moved forward with getting engineering completed for the road and infrastructure work. How the lots are exactly divided up can be modified, but the actual infrastructure, the road, to a certain point, ideally we would know the number of lots and the location of the lots prior to the construction work being completed, so that the stubs and water line shutoffs and things like that can be installed at the same time. So you don't have to go back under the road or anything later after construction. So the intent is that, it's a minor change to adjust a lot, but it would have to be done prior to, construction being approved and completed.
All right, thank you. I still think we should be, as a council, thinking ahead and allotting a certain amount of land in that space that we already own for a future fire hall, but that's maybe another argument for another day.
Okay. No other questions? Brings us down to bylaws, I believe, right? Good, sir. New form, we can pass the two bylaws. This would be bylaw 2024-021 to approve bylaws 2024-020 and 2024-021. Mover, Moved by Deputy Mayor Hutchison, seconder. Councillor Forrester. Thank you. Any questions on the bylaws? Confirming in the site plan? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Yep, yep. Any new business? We're down to announcements. Any announcements from council? Councillor Hutchison. Doug? Yeah. Turn on your mic.
I'd just like to announce that the Frazzle Fest on the weekend was a success, at least in the Durham area. And maybe some other people can speak to some of the other areas, Ayton and Newstead and Elmwood sort of thing. But it was good attendance for most events. And I'd like to compliment Cody and Nicole from our staff for their involvement. They spent, and Ashley, sorry. Yes, and Ashley. Ashley was there too, taking pictures for their involvement and helping out. And also for Karen, Karen from the South Grey Chamber was there quite a bit to spear things on. So it was a good weekend and hopefully people enjoyed themselves. So thank you to all those people involved and all the volunteers and all the organizations like the Lions and so on that did a lot of work putting on events. So congratulations.
Anything else? Any others? Councillor Shea. Jeff?
It's been alluded to a couple of times, but just remind people that there's a public meeting Thursday at 6:30 at the Durham Community Center around new flood mapping for the Durham Creek and the ramifications of that, and perhaps the impact on the ongoing flooding that people in that area experience.
Thank you for that. Anything else? Any other ones? So you don't want to talk about chicken wings and the bingo at Elmwood, Councillor Forrester? I didn't stay for the bingo, but the chicken wings were darn good.
In Elmwood for the Friday night, they had the chicken wings and bingo for the children, and the homecoming was there selling their wares. Seemed like a good crowd. And then I was aware at roller skating, they had 95 people on the Friday night and 100 on yesterday, which wasn't a bad turnout for how many events were happening yesterday and the weather on Friday.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, Frazzle Fest went off very well. Thank you to the Community Services Department and everybody, the staff that participated and got it going. The other thing was Ayton, Councillor Noon was there in Ayton at Centennial Hall for the Frazzle Fest volleyball tournament. It was put on 10 teams, I think you said, and was able to be there for a little bit of that, and it seemed to be going very well. There was enough snow come down to turn it to a snow volleyball instead of a mud volleyball, which you had been looked like we were going to have up until about Thursday. So no, excellent for the weekend, Family Day weekend, and public skating and everything. So I think it was great for the community to have that. All right. Closed session. That's it for announcements. I believe we do have a closed session. Jamie, will take us to that.
Through your miracles, just in the interest of timing now, in the event that our discussion runs long, I'm wondering if now would be appropriate to do a motion to extend beyond curfew.
With your professionalism and suggestion, yes, probably will be. And that was be my fault for allowing the presentation from Saugeen Conservation going as a little further than the 10 minutes that was allotted. Okay, do I have a motion to move that extension, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Townsend?
So just through your miracles, just for clarity, it's that council hereby approves going past curfew to 1:30 p.m. in accordance with the procedural bylaw.
Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. So we do have the extension. The only thing that we really have on, left on the agenda is closed session. I would ask for a move. Yes, yeah, we'll take a 5-minute break to get ready for that and go. So we'll be in recess for 5 minutes. We'll come back and then be in closed session. There we go. We'll call the meeting back to order. Thank you, Ash. At this time, there is a need to go into closed session. Jamie, so I'll need a mover and a seconder to go into closed session. Moved by Councillor Forrester and Councillor Shea. Huh? I've got it moved and seconded. Am I good? Yep. The council now moves into closed session to consider minutes of a closed session from the regular meeting February 6th and another matter regarding a proposed or pending disposition of land respecting a municipal property. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Very good. We're now into closed session. We'll call the closed session to order. Ready? Okay, welcome back. Reporting out of closed session. Now that we're back into open session of council. We reviewed the minutes of the closed session regular council meeting held on February the 6th, 2024, and discussed one matter regarding a proposed or pending disposition of land respecting a municipal property, and direction was provided to staff to execute that. Okay, thank you very much. That's it for closed session. And that's it for everything on the agenda. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.